Chapter 28-32. That's right. Ji Tianxing had already guessed that Sir God Gui Yuan would come personally. Hence he did not set up a normal monarch-level divine array but set up the heaven punishment sword array. It was specially prepared for Sir God Gui Yuan. Qi Huanji and 120 Qi family guards were hiding at the bottom of the sea around the island. Ji Tianxing knew that if Sir God Gui Yuan came he would definitely discover them. Hence when he noticed Manager Jin's abnormality he guessed that Sir God Gui Yuan had come. He changed his initial plan and did not activate the Heaven Punishment Sword Array to kill Manager Jin and the Divine Worship. Instead he let Manager Shi bring him into the Divine Worship. This process was very smooth for the Gui Yuan Association and there were no setbacks. Then Manager Jin would let down his guard. Sir God Gui Yuan, who was hiding in the dark, would kill the Qi family guards and expose his whereabouts. Everything was within Ji Tianxing's expectations and control. Sir God Gui Yuan understood what he meant and sneered, "Ha, when you said that everything was within your control you wanted to lure me out? Now that I am here what can you do? Without traps and ambushes, you can't even touch my clothes. Even with the help of the divine array, you can forget about hurting me. This is the difference in power, do you understand?" Sir God Gui Yuan's face was full of pride and he was fearless. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Yes, what you said makes sense. We really can't kill you. However." Before he could finish his sentence he brandished the Heaven Burier sword and pierced it with a cold starlight, aiming at the glabella of Divine Lord Gui Yuan. At the same time, Manager Shi and the other two brought the Vice President and Zhu Qingqing to the Nameless Island without hesitation. Sir God Gui Yuan only had two choices. One was to let the three managers escape to the island while he resolved Ji Tianxing's attack. Two was to kill the three managers and save the Vice President and Zhu Qingqing. In that case he would have to face Ji Tianxing's attack. Sir God Gui Yuan's choice was to ignore the three deacons and punch Ji Tianxing. After all, he was extremely selfish and did not care about the life and death of the Vice President and Zhu Qingqing. No matter what, he had to kill Ji Tianxing first and seize the Heavenly Dao opportunity. Then he would deal with the three deacons. His decision was exactly what Ji Tianxing had expected. Boom. Amidst a deafening, muffled boom, two golden fist lights struck Ji Tianxing head-on, sending him flying hundreds of miles away. His face was distorted and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Two of the bones in his chest were broken. Sir God Gui Yuan's power was indeed much stronger than he had expected. Almost at the same time, a cold gleam pierced Sir God Gui Yuan and bloomed in his chest. Boom. With a muffled sound the cold light suddenly exploded, turning into a mushroom cloud with a radius of 10,000 feet, rising into the sky. If it was a heavenly god expert his chest and stomach would have been blown apart on the spot. However, Sir God Gui Yuan's defense was strong. Only his golden robe was torn and a fist-sized hole appeared. The skin on his chest and stomach was dark gold in color, as tough as top-notch divine gold. Ji Tianxing's attack only left a dent on his chest and stomach, breaking his skin and causing him to bleed a few drops of divine blood. It was not even considered a light injury. At most it was a superficial wound. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. Sir God Gui Yuan sneered disdainfully. He flapped his golden wings and instantly flew hundreds of miles away, continuing to punch Ji Tianxing. At that moment, Ji Tianxing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. I used 80% of my power and cast my sword Dao Divine Power. Only then did I manage to break his defense and bleed him. That's great. At least I have a chance to kill him. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Sir God Gui Yuan pounced over again. This time Sir God Gui Yuan used 7 types of nomological powers and struck out 2 5-colored fist lights. The power doubled. If Ji Tianxing were to be hit he would be severely injured on the spot. However, he did not think of taking it head-on. Without hesitation he used the space law and teleported 1,000 miles to the south. Swoosh. The 2 5-colored fist radiances missed their target. Ji Tianxing burst forth with his fastest speed, rushing towards the Nameless Island without caring about anything else. Sir God Gui Yuan immediately reacted and chased after him with a hideous smile. Little B****, you want to escape from my hands? Dream on. He flapped his golden wings and his body turned into a blurry shadow that flickered in the sky. In just 2 breaths' time he chased after Ji Tianxing for more than 6,000 miles and stopped him. Kidai. Sir God Gui Yuan roared and suddenly lifted his right leg to kick at Ji Tianxing. Swoosh! A crescent-shaped five-colored divine light slashed at Ji Tianxing like a scimitar that was 10,000 feet long. At the same time, Sir God Gui Yuan used the space law to seal the space within a radius of 10,000 miles. It was impossible for Ji Tianxing to teleport to dodge. At the critical moment, he could only activate his most violent divine power and slash at Sir God Gui Yuan's sword with both hands. Sky-splitting sword. The huge five-colored sword that was 10,000 feet long slashed at the five-colored scimitar light, and there was an earth-shattering bang. Kaboom! The huge sword and scimitar collapsed at the same time, and there were billions of divine light fragments that scattered in the night sky. The area within a radius of 10,000 miles was illuminated, and the sea region within a few thousand miles was swept by the impact, creating huge waves that were 1,000 feet long. Pif! Ji Tianxing was sent flying by the violent divine power. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew 100 miles away. Of course, he had adjusted his direction when he attacked. Even though he was sent flying, he flew to the south and was closer to the Nameless Island. After reducing the impact, he continued to speed up and rushed to the Nameless Island. Sir God Gui Yuan smirked and caught up with him quickly. He launched a fierce attack. Bam! Both of them exchanged blows, and there was an earth-shattering bang. Ji Tianxing was sent flying 100 miles away again. His injuries were getting worse and his face was ghastly pale. Seeing that his injuries were getting worse and his aura was getting weaker and weaker, Sir God Gui Yuan laughed out loud and was filled with murderous intent. Kaboom! When Ji Tianxing was sent flying for the 5th time, he finally returned to the Nameless Island. At this moment, his chest and abdomen were caved in. Dozens of his bones were broken and his left arm was shattered. His power was greatly weakened and his face was as pale as paper. He was drenched in cold sweat. However, he stood on the mountain peak in the middle of the island and revealed a relieved expression. He looked at Sir God Gui Yuan, who was 100 miles away, and sneered. A Sir God expert is just a soup. I have finally escaped. What can you do to me? Sir God Gui Yuan stood on the sea surface and stared at him with a gloomy look. Another 20 miles and he would step onto the Nameless Island and enter the ambush. Sir God Gui Yuan was hesitating. Should he enter the island? At this moment, Ji Tianxing was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock on the mountain peak and was circulating his power to heal his injuries. It was obvious that his injuries were very serious and he couldn't hold on any longer. What was worse was, as he was circulating his power to heal his injuries, he sneered at Sir God Gui Yuan. I have set up an array on this island and it can be called an inescapable net. If you dare to take half a step onto the island, I will make you wish you were dead. Sir God Gui Yuan's eyes lit up and he sneered. You are already at the end of your rope and your life is at stake. Yet you still dare to bluff and threaten me. You don't know that the more you act like this, the more it proves the fear in your heart. Baidu search 81 Chinese website. No advertising message. Chapter 2833. If Ji Tianxing didn't say anything and didn't do anything, Lord Origin Master Gui would still hesitate. Then Sir God Gui Yuan would still hesitate and consider for a while. But his injuries were too serious and he couldn't hold on any longer. He had to heal his injuries. Plus he even threatened Lord Origin Master Gui. Then he revealed his weakness. Lord Origin Master Gui was sure that he was going to die soon. Plus, how powerful could a divine array set up by a heaven god expert? There was nothing to be afraid of. Kid, give up resisting. Kneel down and accept your death. Sir God Gui Yuan sneered ferociously. He stepped across the night sky and entered the island. Ji Tianxing was still sitting on the giant rock at the peak of the mountain. He frowned and roared, Lord Origin Master Gui, you are courting death. The 3 deacons stood behind him and roared in panic. Lord Origin Master Gui, do you want to die? Don't come any closer. Otherwise we will activate the divine array. Lord Origin Master Gui, we will fight with you. The 3 deacons acted like they were tough on the outside but weak on the inside. They looked ferocious on the outside but they were panicking on the inside. They weren't acting. They were really afraid. They knew very well how powerful Sir God Gui Yuan was. Plus, they saw with their own eyes that Ji Tianxing was seriously injured. But they didn't know how powerful the 2 divine arrays set up by Ji Tianxing were. They had the same idea as Lord Origin Master Gui. Even if a heaven god expert was an array master, how powerful could he set up a divine array? He definitely couldn't stop Lord Origin Master Gui. So, Deacon Shi and the other two were really panicking and at a loss. They seemed to foresee that Lord Origin Master Gui would beat them half to death and bring them back to Hidden Dragon Island to be tortured in public. What awaited them was inhumane torture and torment. Thinking of that, the three deacons were terrified and their faces turned pale. Zhoush. Lord Origin Master Gui was full of confidence and he stepped onto the island overbearingly. He stepped across the night sky and approached the peak of the mountain. 80 miles, 60 miles, 40 miles. The three deacons' hands started to tremble. Finally, Sir God Gui Yuan stopped and stood 30 miles away from the peak of the mountain. He stared at Ji Tianxing and sneered mockingly, "So what if I'm here? Where is the divine array you set up? What about your so-called inescapable net? Hurry up and activate it. Let this monarch see with his own eyes, what kind of trash is it?" The three deacons were in complete despair. They really wanted to kneel down and surrender, begging for forgiveness from Sir God Gui Yuan. They regretted it now. Why were they so spineless and loyal to the unreliable Ji Tianxing? However, they knew very well that it was useless to kneel and beg for mercy now. Sir God Gui Yuan couldn't tolerate traitors and would only torture them even more viciously. Therefore they could only force themselves to hold on. Right at this moment, Ji Tianxing, who was like an arrow at the end of its flight, absorbed the life-saving divine light from the heaven-mending orb, and his face immediately glowed with radiance. In the blink of an eye, the injuries all over his body were healed and he returned to his peak state. He stood up and said with a smile, "Celestial Lord Gui Yuan, as you wish, please enjoy." As he spoke, he used his mind to control the two divine arrays and they were instantly activated. Swoosh. A dark golden light cover with a radius of 300 miles appeared in the universe and sealed the entire island. Then a slightly smaller seven-colored divine formation appeared on the island. The two great arrays operated at the same time and released a terrifying invisible divine power that suppressed Sir God Gui Yuan. His face instantly changed and he creased his eyebrows. He roared subconsciously, "This is a monarch-level divine array? Impossible. How could a heaven god set up a monarch-level divine array?" Sir God Gui Yuan was finally moved and he couldn't maintain his composure and confidence. Because the power of the two monarch-level divine arrays had already made his body stiff and his actions slow down. Even the divine power in his body was sealed by the invisible power of the array and it was moving very slowly. In the two divine arrays, his fighting power dropped tremendously and he could only give play to 60% of his power. Only a middle monarch-level divine array can achieve such an effect. Little bastard, how could you do it? Who's helping you in the dark? Even Qi Tianlong wouldn't be able to do it. Sir God Gui Yuan used all his strength to resist the suppression of the array as he questioned Ji Tianxing in shock and anger. However, Ji Tianxing and the three deacons left the divine array and flew to the sea at the edge of the island. They stood in the night sky and looked through the two divine light barriers as they sneered at Sir God Gui Yuan. Sir God Gui Yuan, no other Sir God helped me. Qi Tianlong didn't even know about this. From the beginning to the end, I was the one who dealt with Gui Yuan Association. Ji Tianxing crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled as he looked at Sir God Gui Yuan and explained slowly. "Do you know why I could set up a monarch-level divine array? Why did I possess the power of a Sir God when I just ascended? Why was I able to injure the vice president? Why am I such a genius? Why am I the first person in history?" Although Ji Tianxing only asked a question and didn't give an answer. Even if Sir God Gui Yuan used his toes to think, he knew that the answer was the opportunity of the heavenly way. Hence, his eyes were instantly filled with blood and turned dark red. It's the opportunity of the heavenly way. Must be. You obtained the opportunity of the heavenly way so that you could stand out and create such a miracle. Sir God Gui Yuan was agitated and his blood was boiling. He roared crazily, "You're just a lowly ascender, a worm from the lower plane. You don't deserve the opportunity of the heavenly way. That's blasphemy to the heavenly way. If I were to snatch your opportunity, I would definitely be 10 times more talented than you and create more glorious miracles. I would even surpass the legendary divine King Jiu Luo and become one of the rulers of the boundless heaven mainland." Ji Tianxing deliberately misled him and made him think that it was the effect of the opportunity of the heavenly way. The result was obvious. Sir God Gui Yuan believed it and was so jealous that he went crazy. Ji Tianxing nodded with satisfaction and laughed wildly. "Yes. You got everything right, but so what? You want to snatch my opportunity? Keep on dreaming. I'm the son of destiny and you're just a lowly worm. Sir God Gui Yuan was agitated and became even more violent. He roared with fire in his eyes. Bullsh *T. I'm the son of destiny. Don't run if you have the guts. I'll break your array now and tear you into pieces. After saying that, Sir God Gui Yuan waved his fists and legs crazily and unleashed fist radiance and leg shadows that covered the sky towards a certain spot in the array. Ji Tianxing didn't waste any more time and activated the power of the two god arrays to suppress Sir God Gui Yuan. Also, the Heaven Extermination Sword Array was fully activated. 3,005 colored giant swords were condensed in the array. They carried a dozen types of nomological powers and attacked Sir God Gui Yuan crazily. Swish swish swish. 3,000 giant swords sealed the heaven and earth and shuttled back and forth like flowing light. It was enough to tear apart all obstacles. Sir God Gui Yuan's power weakened further. He was trapped in the sword light and couldn't escape. Chapter 28:34. Bam bam bam. Sir God Gui Yuan unleashed his strongest fighting power and his punches and kicks created a sky full of shadows. Hundreds of fist lights and kick shadows had the power to destroy heaven and earth. They continuously hit the northwest corner of the formation. His consciousness was very strong and he could clearly sense that the power in the corner was weak. If he wanted to break through the formation, he had to attack from that corner. However, the hundreds of fist lights and kick shadows that he threw out were shattered by the huge swords in the blink of an eye. However, the more it was like that, the more obvious it was. Sir God Gui Yuan was certain that the corner was the weak point of the formation. Otherwise, why would Ji Tianxing block with all his strength and protect that corner? Sir God Gui Yuan sneered in his heart and he attacked with all his might. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky and closed his eyes. He used his divine thought to control the formation and tried his best to resolve Sir God Gui Yuan's attack. Bam bam bam. Boom. Rumble. Various divine lights and shadows collided with the five-colored huge swords and there was a series of earth-shattering noises. Sir God Gui Yuan attacked crazily and his divine power was depleting quickly. However, he didn't realize it. Because his attack frequency was getting faster and the 3,000 huge swords couldn't stop him. He was approaching the northwest corner and he was getting closer to the formation's weak point. As long as I can get close to that spot, I will definitely break the formation. Sir God Gui Yuan was very confident and he was full of anticipation. Very soon 100 breaths time passed. Sir God Gui Yuan had destroyed half of the 3,005 colored huge swords. With only 1,000 or so swords left, they could no longer stop him from attacking. He finally reached the northwest corner. He sneered complacently and performed his unique skill with all his might. Space-splitting god-slaying. Sir God Gui Yuan roared and he formed a seal with both his hands. He flapped his wings crazily and there was a sacred golden light that soared into the sky. Swoosh. His body merged with the golden light, forming a giant sword that was thousands of feet long. It was extremely holy and mighty. Slash. As Sir God Gui Yuan roared, the huge sword slashed at the divine light barrier with the power to split open the sky. At that moment, Sir God Gui Yuan became one with the sword and he was determined to win. Ji Tianxing, who had been expressionless all this time, curled his lips into a sneer. Boom. The 1,000-meter-tall divine golden sword struck the divine light barrier with a loud boom that shook the 9 heavens. The entire island trembled violently, and huge waves were stirred up on the surrounding sea. For this sword, Sir God Gui Yuan had used all his strength without holding back. However, he was immediately met with tragedy. It was only when the giant sword struck the divine light barrier that he realized something was amiss. Not only was the 1-foot-thick barrier of divine light not weak, it even concealed the most dangerous killing intent. The power of the entire formation was actually concentrated on that one point. What seemed like a weak point was actually a trap. Boom. The divine light barrier blocked the slash of the 1,000-feet giant sword, and it actually erupted with 3 times the power as it counterattacked. This was borrowing strength to fight strength. The stronger the power Sir God Gui Yuan used to kill, the stronger the power of the backlash. Crack. Amidst an earth-shattering sound, the 10,000 feet long golden sword exploded into pieces. They turned into billions of golden specks of light and scattered on the island. Sir God Gui Yuan was also sent flying backward. His body was covered in cracks and golden blood splattered everywhere. Peef. he fell from the sky as divine blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. His aura was extremely chaotic. Previously, when the 3,000 huge swords struck him, he only suffered some external injuries and it was nothing serious. However, this move had shattered his internal organs. His divine spark was trembling and he was severely injured. Bam! Sir God Gui Yuan fell from the sky and landed on the peak of the mountain. The small mountain had been suppressed and slashed by the huge swords. It had long been smashed into pieces and turned into rubble. After Sir God Gui Yuan landed, he destroyed the rubble that was 1,000 feet high, turning it into a deep pit. Endless dust and gravel flew into the sky and covered the entire island. Damn bastard, how dare you scheme against me? Sir God Gui Yuan, who was covered in blood, crawled out from the rubble and roared furiously. Tianxing stood at the top of the formation and looked down at the pirate beneath him. He sneered and said, "What a joke. From the beginning until now, every move you made was within my calculations. You only realized it now. Don't you think it's too late?" "You." Sir God Gui Yuan pointed at him with a trembling finger. He was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. Tianxing said calmly, "You are very smart. However, it's a pity that you are only smart in small matters and do not have great wisdom. Most importantly, you were blinded by hatred and selfishness. That's why you ended up in such a state today. Cut the crap and die in peace." Then he continued to control the Heaven Punishment Sword formation and condensed 3,000 huge swords to slash at Sir God Gui Yuan. Then the power of the 5-colored huge swords increased by 50% and the effect was more obvious. After all, Sir God Gui Yuan was severely injured and he was only left with 50% of his power. Plus, his confidence had suffered a blow and his mind had been stimulated to the point of insanity. He was no longer calm. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. As the sword light flashed, Sir God Gui Yuan's golden robe was shredded into pieces that danced in the sky. There were wounds on his body and they were so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood splattered everywhere. Screams filled with rage rang out from the heaven-destroying sword formation one after another. Sir God Gui Yuan was exhausted and he could only defend against the 3,000 huge swords. As for cracking the Heaven Punishment Sword formation, he didn't have a chance. Plus, with his knowledge and skills, he definitely wouldn't be able to crack it. Then he was like a wild beast that was trapped in a cage. He endured endless beatings and punishments until he died. Deacon Shi and the other two witnessed the scene with their own eyes. They felt their mouths go dry and they broke out in cold sweat. The three of them were silent and they didn't dare to make a sound. They looked at Tianxing with respect and fear in their eyes. The Ascender only had the power of a heaven god. However, he had schemed against Sir God Gui Yuan and played him so miserably. Such scheming and skills were really terrifying. The three of them swore that they would be loyal to Tianxing. They couldn't be disloyal. Otherwise, they would end up in a worse state than Sir God Gui Yuan. At the same time, Qi Huangji led more than 100 Qi family guards and flew out from the bottom of the sea. They came to the night sky. Although more than 20 guards had been killed by Sir God Gui Yuan. In actual fact, the survivors didn't do anything. They just watched the show from the side. Qi Huangji felt embarrassed that he didn't help at all. Hence, he led more than 100 guards and released their divine power to activate the formation. The three deacons' eyes lit up. They finally had something to do and they quickly joined Qi Huangji's team. Then more than 100 heaven gods exerted their strength and provided more power to the Heaven Punishment Sword formation. The power of the sword formation increased by 50% and the power of the 3,000 huge swords increased tremendously. Sir God Gui Yuan ended up in a worse state. He was covered in wounds and he didn't look like a human anymore. Chapter 28:35. Although the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation was terrifying, Senior Immortal Gui was not an ordinary person. However, Sir God Gui Yuan wasn't an ordinary person. He lasted for 7 minutes and didn't die. Even though his body had been reduced to a skeleton and looked extremely miserable and ferocious. It wouldn't endanger his life. For a Sir God expert like him, even if his body was destroyed and he was only left with a divinity, he could reform his body in a short period of time. After another 200 to 300 years of seclusion, he could recover and reach the peak again. Of course, Senior Immortal Gui Yuan couldn't break the heaven-destroying sword formation and he was destined to be trapped there. Under Tianxing's control, The killing speed of the 3,005 colored huge swords obviously slowed down. Senior Immortal Gui Yuan, who looked like a bloody skeleton, was in despair. Suddenly he felt that the power of the sword formation had weakened and his desire to live was suddenly ignited. He saw a glimmer of hope. ****. No matter how strong your formation is, there will be a time when it runs out of energy. Come on. Kill me if you can. Senior Immortal Gui Yuan lifted his head and roared at Ji Tianxing in the night sky. Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "You are definitely going to die. No one can save you. However, you are a little lonely and pitiful on your journey alone. I will be merciful and send you a companion to die with you." As he spoke, he picked up the unconscious vice president and threw him into the heaven-destroying sword formation. The strange thing was that the vice president fell from the sky. The 3,005 colored huge swords shuttled back and forth in the formation, but they didn't touch him. Was it because the vice president was too lucky? Or did the 5-colored huge swords have eyes and avoid him? Senior Immortal Gui Yuan was dumbfounded and he stared at the vice president who fell from the sky. He came back to his senses and cursed angrily, ****. You are so vicious. You will die a horrible death." As he spoke, he flew over instinctively and caught the vice president with open arms. After all, the vice president was his confidant and also his most capable arm. Seeing that the vice president had fallen into the sword array and was about to be killed, how could he not save him? However, just as Sir God Gui Yuan caught the vice president, he saw Ji Tianxing reveal a mocking smile. At that moment, Sir God Gui Yuan instinctively felt that something was amiss. He immediately wanted to abandon the vice president and retreat to a relatively safe corner. However, it was all too late. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the vice president exploded. The remaining half of the god's body, the god's blood, and the godhead were instantly detonated. Dazzling blood-red light and golden divine flames rose up like a mushroom cloud, filling the entire heaven-destroying sword formation. However, it wasn't the vice president who had self-destructed. However, the power of the explosion was not inferior in the slightest. Ji Tianxing had already placed 2 types of seals and restrictions on the vice president's body. He had even infused his blood with a Dao Lord level God seal. At this critical moment, he only needed a single thought to turn the vice president into a bomb and detonate it. In the earth-shattering explosion, the vice president was completely obliterated. No matter if it was the god's body or the godhead, they had turned into boundless divine flames, leaving nothing behind. Sir God Gui Yuan was carrying the vice president and he couldn't dodge at all. Hence, he took the brunt of the explosion. In the blink of an eye, Sir God Gui Yuan's body was blasted into powder. A thumb-sized 5-colored godhead was also filled with cracks from the explosion and flew into the sky. Sir God Gui Yuan was dumbfounded and his consciousness was blurry. He had never expected that the vice president would become Ji Tianxing's hidden weapon and injure him to such an extent. Not only was his god's body destroyed, but his godhead was also severely damaged. Not to mention that his power had been reduced by more than half, he couldn't even differentiate between north and south. His consciousness was in a mess. Damn it! This guy is really despicable. Sir God Gui Yuan roared furiously. He couldn't wait to tear Ji Tianxing into pieces and grind his bones into dust. However, he also knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge now that he had ended up in such a state. Moreover, he had lost his god's body and was only left with a damaged godhead. He was definitely going to die. No amount of words could express his fury and hatred. Even if he was only left with a godhead, he wouldn't give up struggling to survive. He used his powerful divine power to form a 5-colored light shadow that was 1,000 feet tall as his new god's body. He held a huge sword that was 1,000 feet long and slashed the protective shield of the formation crazily. Bam! Bam bam! There was a series of thuds and the 5-colored light shield shook violently as it was slashed. There were layers of ripples. Even so, the formation was as stable as before and there wasn't a single crack. Ji Tianxing controlled the 3,000 huge swords to strangle Sir God Gui Yuan again. There was a crisp shattering sound and the 5-colored light shadow that was 1,000 feet tall was slashed until divine light scattered in all directions. After the 5-colored light shadow collapsed, Sir God Gui Yuan's godhead would be destroyed mercilessly. However, Sir God Gui Yuan's power was vast and mighty. He held on for 100 breaths of time and the 5-colored light shadow didn't disperse. He could even use more than 30 types of power of laws to counterattack continuously. More than half of the 3,000 huge swords were destroyed and Ji Tianxing had no choice but to form them again. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianxing picked up the unconscious Zhu Qingqing and threw her into the heaven-destroying sword formation. Sir God Gui Yuan, I'll give you another gift to accompany you in death. As he shouted, Zhu Qingqing fell from the sky and smashed towards Sir God Gui Yuan. Sir God Gui Yuan had learned his lesson. Not only did he not catch Zhu Qingqing, he retreated 100 miles and hid in a corner of the formation. Plus, he had formed a divine light shield to block the explosion. But the result was different from what he had expected. Zhu Qingqing didn't explode. When she fell into the formation, she was slashed into powder by the sword light and blood mist filled the sky. Sir God Gui Yuan had a false alarm and he realized that he had been tricked by Ji Tianxing. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and roared like thunder. The people of the Qi family outside the array laughed contemptuously and ridiculed him. Ji Tianxing was disappointed and he reprimanded, Sir God Gui Yuan, you are such a hypocritical and selfish B*****. You didn't save her. She was the deacon of the Gui Yuan Association, an elite that you valued the most. At the critical moment of life and death, you killed your loyal brother in order to save your own life. An inhumane B***** like you should slit your own throat and commit suicide. Sir God Gui Yuan was furious and he almost went mad. You were the one who chopped off Zhu Qingqing's limbs and threw her into the formation. I don't want to repeat the same mistake. I don't want to be blasted again. How did I become a hypocritical and selfish B*****? Are you going to be reasonable or not? That's right. Ji Tianxing didn't intend to reason with him right from the start. He wanted to trick him, kill him and kill him. Swish swish swish. Seeing Sir God Gui Yuan's emotions fluctuating, Ji Tianxing quickly controlled the formation to unleash a stronger power and slashed crazily. Chapter 28:36. About an hour later, the Heaven Punishment Sword formation gradually stopped working. Everything had ended. Sir God Gui Yuan's body was shattered into pieces by the sword formation. His divinity was also shattered into pieces. Dozens of fragments were scattered in the ruins. Sir God Gui Yuan had died. Before he died, he laughed crazily and roared, "Little bastard, you are ruthless enough. I lost. But don't be happy too early. I can't kill you, but someone else can. Very soon you will be buried with me." Ah! Those were his last words. After a long while, the sound that reverberated in the sky gradually disappeared. Heaven and earth returned to peace. Then the long night had passed and the sky was bright. Under Qi Huangji's command, hundreds of Qi family guards stopped casting their skills and sat down to meditate. Ji Tianxing stepped into the Heaven Punishment Sword formation to search for the spoils of war. Sir God Gui Yuan's divinity fragment had condensed over 30 types of laws and was a rare treasure. As for his spatial ring, Ji Tianxing was also determined to get it. After all, 80% of the wealth of the Gui Yuan group members had been confiscated by Sir God Gui Yuan. Ji Tianxing believed that Sir God Gui Yuan's space ring would definitely contain a large amount of cultivation resources. Besides, Zhu Qingqing's divinity fragment was also a part of the spoils of war. After Ji Tianxing swallowed it, he would be able to increase his power. Deacon Shi and the other two stood stiffly in the sky and looked at Ji Tianxing quietly. Their gazes were complicated. Until now they still couldn't believe it. The powerful and arrogant Sir God Gui Yuan was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that. He was a famous Sir God who had condensed 39 laws and was about to break through to the fifth heaven realm. He died on the nameless island just like that. Moreover, he died so miserably without anyone knowing about it. The three deacons couldn't accept it. This was totally different from what they had imagined. Before this, they had never thought that anyone could kill Sir God Gui Yuan. Ji Tianxing couldn't do it. Qi Tianlong from the Qi family couldn't do it. Even if the Lord of Qingshan City were to personally make a move, it would still not be enough. But then Sir God Gui Yuan had really died. A powerhouse comparable to a fifth-level divine lord was actually killed by a celestial deity. Even if this heavenly deity had schemed and set up an inescapable net. However, this was also unrealistic. It was too inconceivable, simply appalling. The three deacons' fear of Ji Tianxing had reached a deeper level, almost carved into their bones. Before long, Ji Tianxing collected the spoils of war and removed the 2 monarch-grade great formations. He also took back the hundreds of thousands of god stones and many divine weapons. The nameless island with a radius of 300 miles had been reduced to ruins. Most of the area had been submerged by the sea, and only a few scattered reefs could be seen. Shua. Ji Tianxing flew back to the sky and arrived in front of the 3 deacons. Deacon Shi was the first to come back to his senses. He quickly bowed and shouted loudly, "Congratulations, Master, for your great victory and for successfully killing Sir God Gui Yuan. You have killed this demon and made a great contribution. You will definitely be rewarded by the Holy Kingdom. From today onwards, your name will spread throughout the Bloody Flame Holy Kingdom and you will become a dazzling new star." The other 2 deacons came back to their senses and quickly echoed, flattering Jian Wushuang. Hearing their flattery and praise, Ji Tianxing didn't have much reaction. He asked indifferently, "A few days ago Sir God Gui Yuan was still your leader. Now that he has been killed by me, isn't it inappropriate for you to be so happy and flattering?" The 2 deacons were stunned and didn't know how to answer. The 2 of them didn't want to flatter Ji Tianxing and make it so exaggerated. However, Deacon Shi wanted to show his loyalty. The 2 of them couldn't disagree and could only go along with him. Deacon Shi quickly shook his head and explained earnestly, "Master, it's not that we are heartless, nor is it that we want to burn bridges and humiliate our old master. It's just that Sir God Gui Yuan was heartless, that's why we are unrighteous. Moreover, we have already pledged our loyalty to you. Of course, we have to stand on your side and feel happy and proud for you." Ji Tianxing looked at him deeply and said with a dignified expression, "Good. Since you are so loyal to me, I will give you a chance to show your loyalty." Qi Huangji just happened to fly over. Jian Wushuang pointed at Qi Huangji and said, "The matter of the Gui Yuan Association has come to an end, but it's not over yet. Next, the 3 of you will follow Qi Huangji and lead the troops to the Hidden Dragon Island to eradicate the remnants of the Gui Yuan Association." The 3 deacons were stunned and revealed astonished and shocked expressions. One of the deacons subconsciously asked, "Master, are you going to kill them all?" As soon as he said that, Deacon Shi glared at him. Ji Tianxing said with an expressionless face, "Take this as a sign of your allegiance to me. You can choose to go or not." Although he didn't say anything threatening, the 3 of them still shivered. However, the 3 deacons still shrank their necks, feeling a deep chill. Since it was proof of their allegiance, how could they not go? Once they refused, the consequences would be obvious. Deacon Shi frowned and thought for a moment, then cupped his hands and said, "Master, since it is proof of our allegiance, the 3 of us will go. We are most familiar with the terrain of the Hidden Dragon Island. If we can't even handle this matter, we are not qualified to be your servants. However, there is something that Master might not know. The people of the Gui Yuan Association hate traitors the most. If the 3 of us lead the troops to the Hidden Dragon Island, we will definitely anger the remnants of the Gui Yuan Association. They will kill us at all costs. Therefore, this old man boldly asks Master to lead everyone there." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and sneered, "The Gui Yuan Association's president, vice president, and a few deacons have all been killed by me. The more than 100 elites in the association are all dead. Now there are more than 100 pieces of trash left on the Hidden Dragon Island. What are you afraid of?" This. Deacon Shi was speechless. He struggled for a moment, then gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He nodded and said, "In that case, this old man obeys. Master, please rest assured that we will complete the mission." Since Deacon Shi had agreed, the other 2 deacons had nothing to say and could only acquiesce. Qi Huangji came to Ji Tianxing's side and asked, "Brother Tianxing, why don't you go to the Hidden Dragon Island with us? The experts of the Gui Yuan Association are all dead. There is no danger for us to go to the Hidden Dragon Island. We are just picking the fruits of victory. Are you going to give all the fruits of victory to our Qi family?" Ji Tianxing didn't deny it. He nodded and said, "The Qi family seems to be prosperous, but in fact, danger lurks everywhere. We need this fruit of victory to strengthen our position. At the same time, we can use this to deter the other big families. But most importantly, have you forgotten what I told you before? The Qi family dispatched so many guards to the setting sun ocean with great fanfare. They will definitely be discovered by the city lord's mansion and the other big families. Now that the Qi family and the mysterious light cave are weak, they will have an opportunity." Chapter 28:37. After listening to Ji Tianxing's words, Qi Huangji immediately realized that the Qi family and Profound Light Cave were in trouble. Indeed, before the revenge operation, Ji Tianqing had reminded Qi Huangji. At that time, Qi Huangji didn't take it to heart. He only thought that he should deal with the Profound Light Cave first before dealing with the Origin Returning Association. Finally, he would resolve the crisis of the City Lord's Mansion and Blood Sword sect. Everything had to be done one by one. As long as he followed Ji Tianqing's plan and fought steadily and surely, there would be no mistakes. But he didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would plan ahead. A few days ago he had foreseen today's crisis. This shocked Qi Huangji and made him worship Ji Tianqing even more. Heavens! You already guessed that the other party would take this opportunity to make trouble? Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, "Is there a better opportunity than now?" Qi Huangji smiled awkwardly and nodded. "My father went to Tianfeng City and I led the troops to deal with the Origin Returning Association. There really isn't a better opportunity than now," Ji Tianqing said seriously. "Since you understand, what are you waiting for?" Qi Huangji looked troubled and said worriedly, "Brother, it won't be dangerous for me to eliminate the remnants of the Origin Returning Association. But I'm worried about you. You haven't gained a firm foothold in the Qi family, but you have to protect the Qi family and Profound Light Cave. I'm afraid that something will happen to you." "Don't jinx it," Ji Tianqing glared at him and said with a smile. "The ones who should be worried are the City Lord's Mansion and Blood Sword sect. It's their bad luck to encounter me." Qi Huangji thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. "That's right. You're so sinister and lowly. No, you're so clever. Anyway, I'm absolutely at ease leaving the Qi family and Profound Light Cave to you." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "Then you can go. Come back quickly." Qi Huangji didn't waste time and handed the young master token to Ji Tianqing. Then he gathered hundreds of Qi family guards and flew to the depths of the setting sun sea region with 3 deacons. Everyone flew across the sky in a mighty manner and soon disappeared at the end of the sea. Ji Tianqing also turned and flew south, rushing back to Qingshan City alone. 6 hours later it was noon. Ji Tianqing rushed back to the Qi residence at the fastest speed possible. He concealed his tracks and aura all the way until he entered the consecration courtyard of the Qi residence, and was not discovered by anyone. Once he returned to the Venerate court, he went into the secret chamber. He took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and placed it on the stone table in the secret room. Then he entered the distorted space-time of the divine pagoda and began to cultivate in seclusion. Previously he had planned to stay in the 8th level heavenly god realm for a while longer. When his god base was stable enough he would break through to the 9th level of the heavenly god realm. But he had a premonition that a storm was coming and he could no longer wait. First he would break through to the 9th degree realm. Then when he reached the peak of the heavenly god realm he would settle down and accumulate. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the distorted space and took out a large pile of quintessence fragments. There were more than 600 pieces of quintessence fragments, and when put together he could gather more than 50 quintessence fragments. These were the experts of the Gui Yuan Association, as well as Zhu Qingqing and Sir God Gui Yuan's. Sir God Gui Yuan's quintessence fragments had the most vigorous power and contained the most number of laws. Ji Tianqing put them last. He first grabbed a handful of ordinary quintessence fragments and activated his engulfed divine power to quickly refine these fragments. In just one day over 100 fragments were completely engulfed by him. The impurities were removed, half of the power went to the heaven-mending pearl, and the other half of the divine power went to him. It was a pity that the laws in these fragments were all ordinary and common laws. 70 to 80% of them were real god laws, and there were only a small number of heavenly god laws. Ji Tianqing did not mind. From the heavenly god laws he picked out 4 that he did not have and refined them all. In this way, his power reached the peak of the 8th degree realm and the number of laws reached 16. Then Ji Tianqing grabbed another handful of quintessence fragments and continued to engulf. 3 days passed. He finally broke through to the 9th level of the heavenly god realm, and the number of laws reached 18. Next he continued to engulf the remaining 400 over quintessence fragments. 5 days later, 9th level of the heavenly god realm, his power doubled and the number of laws reached 19. 7 days later, his power doubled and the number of laws reached 20. 9 days later, his power tripled and the number of laws reached 21. 12 days later, his power quadrupled and the number of laws reached 22. By then, including Zhu Xian, the quintessence fragments of the experts of the Gui Yuan Association were all engulfed by Ji Tianxing. Only Sir God Gui Yuan's 12 quintessence fragments were left. He decided to study them and engulf them slowly. Swoosh. Ji Tianxing picked up a 5-colored fragment and held it in his palm. He used the black whirlpool to refine it slowly. The boundless divine power in the fragment flowed into the heaven-mending pearl like a torrential river. After being purified by the heaven-mending pearl, half of the divine power entered his body and increased his power quickly. At the same time, the divine Tao laws in the fragment were peeled off by him bit by bit and refined one by one. After refining one fragment, he picked up the second one and repeated the process. Unknowingly, a month passed. Sir God Gui Yuan's 12 quintessence fragments were all refined by Ji Tianxing. The current him already reached peak 9th level celestial deity realm. Furthermore, he plundered 18 types of laws from Sir God Gui Yuan's quintessence fragments. And the number of divine Tao laws that he possessed reached a horrifying 40. Grasping 40 types of divine Tao laws with peak celestial deity strength, this was something that had never happened before. Moreover, among those 40 laws, most of them were celestial deity level laws. There were also 5 Tao Lord level laws and even a divine king level devour law. Such an unparalleled genius, looking across the entire boundless heaven continent, one could not find more than a few. Even though he was only peak celestial deity realm currently, his true combat power had already reached an unfathomable level. With that, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation with satisfaction. When he opened his eyes, he muttered to himself softly, "This time I have to stabilize at peak celestial deity for a long time. I can only break through to the Divine Lord realm after my god base is firm." Done talking, he left the Divine Tower and returned to the secret chamber. He was in close seclusion in the distorted spacetime for as long as a month. Only half a day had passed in the outside world. It was already late at night. Under the dim curtain of night, Azure Mountain City was sleeping peacefully. Inside Qi Manor was also very quiet. Only a few places were lit up. There were also several teams of guards patrolling through the night. Ji Tianxing meditated and regulated his breathing in the secret chamber, but released his divine sense to envelop the entire Qi Manor, secretly observing the situation. On the surface, Qi Manor was peaceful and auspicious. Even if family head and young lord were not around, Qi Manor was still in good order. But Ji Tianxing detected the abnormality very quickly. There was a smoke-like black shadow that quietly passed through the west courtyard, leaving Qi Manor silently. That black shadow's strength was not ordinary. He was very clear about Qi Manor's terrain, patrolling guards and hidden sentries. The black shadow passed through several courtyards and palaces, circling around 6 hidden sentries and 2 patrol teams, and was not discovered by anyone. After leaving Qi Manor, that black shadow dived underground, speeding in the direction of the South City. Chapter 2838. Swoosh. Ji Tianxing immediately flew out of the consecration court and quietly followed. He also concealed his whereabouts and aura, shuttling through the night like a ghost, not being discovered by anyone. After leaving Qi Manor, he also tunneled underground and quietly followed that black shadow. The 2 people, one in front and one behind, passed through half of Azure Mountain City, quietly crossed the city wall, and hurried in the direction of the southern suburbs. South of Azure Mountain City was all rolling mountain ranges, covered in lush forests. Under the night sky, only the outlines of the many mountain ranges could be seen, dark shadows overlapping. Ji Tianxing and that black-robed man maintained a distance of 100,000 feet from beginning to end. Logically speaking, at such a close distance, the black-robed man should have discovered him long ago. But the black-robed man's strength was only at the 9th level celestial god realm. Ji Tianxing's method of concealing his whereabouts and aura was too brilliant. The 2 were 100,000 feet apart. It was impossible for the black-robed man to discover him. About 7 minutes later, the 2 flew out 30,000 miles far away from Azure Mountain City. At this time, the black-robed man burrowed out of the ground and flew to a 10,000 feet tall mountain peak. That was a nearly straight lone peak like a giant sword that reached the heavens, pointing straight to the firmament. Compared to the surrounding mountains, this lone peak had a majestic aura, showing off its sharpness. The black-robed man flew to the lone peak and very soon burrowed into a stone door, vanishing. That stone door was on the cliff, covered by a huge rock on the outside, rather hidden. Ji Tianxing knew at a glance that there was a passageway behind the stone door, which should lead to the interior of the mountain. As for the peak of the lone peak under the cover of the huge rock and forest, there was also a spacious courtyard. But the courtyard was dark and there were no traces of divine race activity either. Ji Tianxing flew to the edge of the cliff and used the earth law to burrow into the rock layer, diving into the interior of the mountain. However, it didn't take long for him to be blocked by a defensive formation. He did not act rashly, secretly using his divine sense to investigate the situation. It turned out that there was a huge cave inside the mountain, artificially excavated to become a secret stronghold. There were dozens of experts guarding inside, and there was also the aura of a divine lord powerhouse. The entire cave was protected by 3 layers of defensive and sealing formations, all low-grade monarch-level divine formations. Ji Tianxing was able to break a divine array of this level. However, it would take some effort and it would take about 2 hours. Of course, if he tried to crack it, it would alert the people in the cave. After weighing the pros and cons, he decided to wait and see. After the black-clothed man entered the cave, no one knew what he did. Only 15 minutes later, the black-clothed man left the cave. Shua. He passed through the night like a wisp of black smoke, burrowing into the ground again and heading back to Green Mountain City. Ji Tianxing knew that the black-clothed man had completed his mission and should be returning to the Qi residence. He remembered the appearance and aura of the man in black, but he did not follow him. He stayed in the belly of the mountain and continued to wait. About 100 breaths later, a divine lord powerhouse led over 40 experts and hurriedly left the cave. The divine monarch wore a black robe and a cloak. He used a divine ability to conceal his true appearance. More than 40 experts were also dressed in black and wore masks, making it impossible to tell their identities. Everyone flew across the night sky as fast as lightning, heading towards the southwest. After they flew 100 miles away, Ji Tianxing quietly followed. Then the group flew over mountains and forests for a total of 60,000 miles. Outside a valley shrouded in clouds, the group of black-clothed men finally stopped. They quietly hid underground and approached the entrance of the valley silently. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing hid 100 miles away and secretly observed. He could see that the huge valley was about 300 miles wide. The valley was gourd-shaped. The entrance was narrow, but the inside was very wide. Moreover, the entire valley was protected by a monarch-level divine array. There must be some secrets hidden inside. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was not very familiar with the terrain outside Green Mountain City. He had heard of some famous places that were often mentioned, such as a certain mountain, a certain lake, and so on. However, he had no impression of the valley in front of him. He only vaguely felt that this matter might be disadvantageous to the Qi family. Just as he was thinking, a divine light lit up at the entrance of the valley. Bam bam bam. There was a dull sound that reverberated between the mountains. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to detect that the leading black-clothed Sir God had activated the defensive array at the entrance of the valley. The guards guarding the valley saw that there were intruders and immediately fought back with their swords and sabers. However, those guards were killed in less than 3 moves by the black-clothed Sir God. Then the black-clothed Sir God led more than 40 black-clothed experts into the valley. The guards guarding the valley sent out a signal that there was an enemy attack. Some of them even shouted loudly. Soon more than 100 divine realm guards rushed out with swords, sabers, and spears. After the 2 groups of people met, they started killing without saying a word. Both sides used all kinds of divine skills to kill with all their might. Rumble. A deafening sound reverberated in the valley, causing the ground to tremble. The dazzling 5-colored divine light lit up 1,000 miles and drove away the darkness. To Ji Tianxing's surprise, the number of guards in the valley was 3 times that of the black-clothed experts. However, the valley guards were forced to retreat in defeat. They were attacked until they were in a mess and suffered heavy casualties. After all, the 40 black-clothed experts were more elite and their leader was a Sir God. Ji Tianxing felt that something was wrong. He quietly flew across the night sky and wanted to enter the valley to see what was going on. At this moment, in the depths of the valley, there were exclamations and shouts from a few corners. The array is broken. That damned bastard actually opened the Great Protective Mountain Array. Ji Tianxing could tell that those were the cries of the valley guards. Then there was a series of beast roars in the depths of the valley. Roar. Roar. A woo. Chirp chirp. Then Ji Tianqing saw many large demonic beasts and divine beasts of different shapes running out from the depths of the valley. There was a silver moon wolf as big as a palace, a red flame tiger with wings, a purple thunder raging bull with a single horn, and a divine bird by Fong with beautiful feathers. Many demonic beasts and divine beasts crazily rushed out of the array and escaped the valley. They scattered in all directions, burrowing into the mountains in all directions, and soon disappeared without a trace. With the roars of beasts, more demonic beasts and divine beasts rushed out of the valley like a tide and flew into the night sky. The guards in the valley were shocked and anxious. They were all flustered and lost their sense of propriety. Even though there were many of them, about 200 of them. But they had to block the black-clothed men's attacks and stop the escaping demonic beasts and divine beasts at the same time. In just a few seconds, more than 70 of the guards in the valley were killed. More than 40 demonic beasts and divine beasts of various kinds escaped. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned. He had guessed the truth. Chapter 28:39. Why would so many wild beasts and mythical beasts appear in the valley outside of Green Mountain City for no reason? Ji Tianqing immediately understood that they must have been raised by someone. Ordinary families and forces couldn't afford to raise so many wild beasts and mythical beasts, nor could they afford to hire over 100 celestial gods. The answer was obvious. That valley and the mythical beasts inside were most likely the Qi family's property. After all, the Qi family was the only one in the entire Green Mountain City that dealt with beasts. There's a mole in the Qi family while Qi Tianlong and Qi Huangji are away? Destroying this valley is like cutting off one of the Qi family's arms. What a good move. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself and rushed to the entrance of the valley without hesitation. Violent divine power was accumulated in his body. His eyes were cold and his right hand was holding the sword of burial of heaven. The Qi family guards at the entrance of the valley had already been killed by the men in black. At the moment, four men in black were guarding the entrance of the valley, responsible for intercepting the Qi family guards who were trying to escape. When they found Ji Tianqing, they were killed by a brilliant sword aura before they could see what Ji Tianqing looked like. Swish swish swish. As the sword aura flashed, the four men in black collapsed and turned into a mist of blood and debris. Ji Tianqing rushed into the valley without hesitation. He didn't get far before 6 men in black surrounded him. Neither side said a word. They attacked as soon as they saw each other, showing no mercy at all. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ji Tianqing put his left hand behind his back and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, unleashing 72 sword auras in one breath. Every sword light was incomparably sharp and contained a powerful power of laws. Could be said that they could destroy the world. The 6 black-clothed men didn't even last a single exchange before they were quickly killed. Then Ji Tianqing continued to rush into the valley. Along the way, the men in black were constantly shouting and cursing as they jumped at him with murderous intent. There was no doubt that Ji Tianqing was on a killing spree and was invincible. 30 breaths later, he rushed into the depths of the valley. At this moment, the ground behind him was already dyed red with blood. At least 20 black-clothed men were killed on the spot, turning into minced meat and blood on the ground. The aftermath of the battle destroyed half of the valley into ruins, leaving behind deep pits and ravines. The Qi family guards guarding the valley had also suffered heavy losses. There were only 60 or so people left. When they saw the reinforcements, they finally calmed down. Some of them went to intercept the escaping divine beasts, while most of them gathered together and followed Ji Tianqing to fight against those black-robed men. The leading black-robed divine emperor finally noticed Ji Tianqing and stopped his charge. He teleported in front of Ji Tianqing and lifted his right leg to sweep at him. The 5-colored divine light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth crashed toward Ji Tianqing like a 1,000-foot-long light pillar. Even though it was just a casual strike from the black-robed divine lord. But it was very powerful, enough to destroy the entire Beast Valley. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and blocked in front of him. The dazzling 5-colored sword light contained 15 kinds of power of laws. Among them was the devouring law. Bang! In the deafening loud noise, Ji Tianqing was knocked back 1,000 feet and his feet plowed 2 deep ravines on the ground. The dazzling sword light was shattered, but the 5-colored light pillar also fell apart. Ji Tianxing blocked the black-robed Divine Lord's attack and was unscathed. The black-robed Divine Lord frowned and narrowed his eyes. The surviving black-clothed men were also shocked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Who is this person? How can he block the attack of the fifth Zhang? Divine Lord? He is also a Divine Lord. Is he Qi Tianlong? No. Qi Tianlong is still in Tianfeng City. How can he suddenly rush back? Many black-robed men looked at each other and discussed secretly. No one recognized Ji Tianxing. After all, he was also wearing a mask to cover his face. At this time, the black-robed Divine Lord snorted and punched out 2 fist shadows toward Ji Tianxing. 2 5-colored fist shadows, one was like a dragon and a tiger and the other was as big as a mountain. Invisible divine power spread out and shrouded the entire Beast Valley. All the Qi family guards and black-robed men, including many divine beasts that broke out of the cages and escaped, were suppressed and trembling with fear. Ji Tianxing was not afraid. He used all his strength to perform the dragon-elephant fist and punched out 2 dragon and elephant shadows. Boom! The 4 fist shadows collided with a deafening noise that reverberated in the Beast Valley. Suddenly, a destructive shock wave spread in all directions and swept through half of the Beast Valley. A thick layer of soil was removed from the ground. The surrounding houses, palaces, and cages were all shattered by the impact. Even the Qi family's guards and black-clothed men were sent flying and fell to the ground in disorder. Many people were injured and vomited blood after falling to the ground. However, Ji Tianxing and the black-robed Divine Lord were safe and sound. They only retreated 100 feet. This result made the black-robed Divine Lord's expression more dignified and his eyes were full of shock. He stared at Ji Tianxing with sharp eyes and said in a deep voice, "You are not Qi Tianlong, nor are you a member of the Qi family. Why are you meddling in other people's business?" As soon as he said this, it proved that he had some understanding of the Qi family's situation. Ji Tianxing was more and more certain that tonight's incident was a conspiracy against the Qi family. When you see injustice on the road, you should help. I'm very curious. How did the Qi family offend you to make you do such a cruel thing? The black-robed Divine Lord naturally refused to answer directly. He said in a threatening tone, "Since you know that this is between us and the Qi family, you should not meddle in other people's business. You better think clearly. You can't afford to offend us." Ji Tianxing suddenly looked up and laughed. "Ha! What a joke. I can't afford to offend you? Well then I will let you all be buried here." As his voice fell, he waved the sword of burial of heaven with all his strength and used a sword technique to attack the black-robed Divine Lord. A sword of life. Absolute shadows of 10 directions. Daylight sword. In just 3 breaths, Ji Tianxing used 3 sword techniques in a row. They were all exquisite and unparalleled sword techniques. The dazzling 5-colored divine light and the dazzling sword light phantoms covered more than half of the Beast Valley. The powerful divine power was always locked on the black-robed Divine Lord. If he was not careful, he would be seriously injured. The black-robed Divine Lord was more and more shocked. He tried his best to dodge and look for an opportunity to fight back. The 2 figures flickered back and forth in the Beast Valley, drifting erratically. The shock wave produced by the collision of the 2 sides shattered the entire Beast Valley into ruins. After a while, the 2 fought into the night sky and flew out of the Beast Valley. The surviving black-robed men were all injured and it was difficult for them to continue fighting. Moreover, the number of surviving Qi family guards was as many as 60 people. If the 2 sides continued to fight, the black-robed men would definitely be wiped out. Therefore, the black-robed men tacitly flew out of the Beast Valley and fled south with the black-robed Divine Lord. Chapter 2840. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen black-robed men escaped from the Beast Valley. More than 60 Qi family guards wanted to chase and capture a few of them alive. After such a big incident, they didn't even know which force the attackers were from. It was difficult to explain to the Qi family. However, those black-robed men escaped too quickly. Moreover, more than half of the Beast Valley was destroyed and almost turned into ruins. There were more than 20 demonic beasts and divine beasts that couldn't escape in time and were still trapped in the ruins. The Qi family guards had to give up the plan to chase and quickly treat and pacify those divine beasts and deal with the aftermath. Ji Tianxing and the black-robed divine emperor had already exchanged hundreds of blows. After the 2 left the Beast Valley, they flew more than 20,000 miles south. At this time, the black-robed men caught up. They were worried about the black-robed Divine Emperor's safety and quickly besieged Ji Tianxing. The black-robed Divine Emperor had a bad premonition. He frowned and scolded, "Don't worry about me, you guys retreat first." However, his words were too late. Ji Tianxing stopped attacking him and turned to kill the black-robed men, using the 10,000 swords returned to sect. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tens of thousands of five-colored giant swords appeared out of thin air within a radius of 1,000 miles. Each sword light was 100 meters long, gorgeous and colorful, and contained 18 types of nomological power. Suddenly the world was enveloped by sword light. The injured black-robed men were also drowned by the divine sword light. Only a series of muffled bangs could be heard. Ah, screams resounded through the night sky. In a short while the black-robed men were all killed by the sword light. Not a single one was left alive. All of them were turned into pieces of flesh and blood. Even their godheads were shattered by the sword light and scattered in the ruins. Naturally, the black-robed Divine Emperor was also besieged by the sword light. He had no choice but to use all kinds of divine arts to resist the sword light's attack. Ji Tianxing soon saw the clues. Although the black-robed Divine Emperor's divine skills were mostly divine powers of the 5 elements, stars and thunder. But at the critical moment he would often release blood swords, blood mist and blood light. Those blood-red divine lights were even more powerful and could always help him avert danger. Ji Tianxing guessed the answer from the obvious characteristics of the cultivation method. Blood Sword Sect. He was 70% sure that the black-robed divine monarch was from the Blood Sword Sect. Since this was the case, there was no need for him to show mercy. Without hesitation he used his trump card. Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body. Ji Tianxing let out a low growl and instantly transformed into a golden armored giant that was hundreds of meters tall. His combat strength increased by 6 times as he charged at the black-robed divine lord like a raging dragon. Sky-breaking sword. 7-star sword. Duan Yu. Shattered sun. God Punisher. Burial of heaven. He performed all kinds of sword Dao unique skills one after another. The dazzling golden sword light, mixed with the thunder god flame, covered an area of 3,000 miles. The black-robed divine lord was forced into a fluster. While resisting with all his might, he was forced to retreat. He had no choice but to use a divine sword. Swoosh. It was a dark red giant sword that was hundreds of meters long and exuded a peerless ferocious aura. Blood Fiend. The black-robed divine lord roared angrily as blood flames burst out from his body. He cast a spell with both hands and controlled the blood-red sword to descend from the sky and slash at Ji Tianxing. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing laughed. You've been forced to reveal your true form? Blood Sword Sect bastard, I'll kill you tonight. With that he also used his ultimate skill without holding back. Sky-breaking sword. He held the burial of heaven with both hands and merged with the divine sword, transforming into a 1,000-meter-tall divine golden sword that slashed at the giant blood-red sword. Although he didn't join forces with Yunyao this time, his strength had reached the peak of the heavenly god realm and had increased by many times. With his full strength, the power of this sword Dao ability had reached an unprecedented limit. Amidst an earth-shattering explosion, the giant blood-red sword was shattered into pieces and blood splashed everywhere. The blood-red sword flew back and stabbed into the ground thousands of miles away. The power of the divine golden sword didn't weaken much as it continued to slash at the black-robed divine lord. The black-robed divine lord was enveloped by the terrifying sword intent. His entire body was cold and stiff. He had nowhere to run. He could only use all his strength to form a blood-red shield to protect himself. The blood-red light barrier exploded with a bang and splintered into pieces that filled the sky. The black-robed divine lord trembled as he spat out a dark red arrow of blood. He staggered back hundreds of meters, but he didn't forget to dodge the golden sword. However, his speed was slightly slower than the others. Bam! The divine golden sword slashed into his left shoulder with a loud thud. The golden sword slashed from top to bottom, splitting him in half. His left shoulder, left arm and left leg were separated from his body and exploded into a bloody mist. Although this sword didn't kill the black-robed divine lord, his godhead was still intact and he could continue to fight. However, half of his body was destroyed. After suffering such a heavy injury, his combat strength had greatly decreased. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to involuntarily cry out in pain. It was exceptionally miserable. Ah! The black-robed divine lord flew back 30 miles before he could stand still in the night sky. He glared angrily at Ji Tianxing, his eyes filled with extreme hatred. He roared hysterically, "You bastard! I remember you. Just you wait, the Blood Sword sect won't let you go. Soon. I'll tear you to shreds very soon." Since the other party had guessed that he was from the Blood Sword sect, he didn't need to hide anymore. He might as well reveal his identity and threaten the other party. He also hoped that the other party would be wary after confirming his identity. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing didn't stop. Instead, he waved his sword even more fiercely. "Old man, I said that you'll be buried here tonight." At this time, Ji Tianxing had already separated from the Sword of Burial of Heaven. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands, raised it high above his head and slashed down from the night sky. The sword intent locked onto the black-robed divine lord, making it impossible for him to dodge. He had to bear the terrifying suppression. In the next moment, the black-robed divine lord was about to be killed by the Sword of Burial of Heaven. At this critical moment, the black-robed divine lord clenched his teeth and made up his mind. Divine blood filling the sky. With a cold shout, the black-robed divine lord's body suddenly exploded, turning into a bloody mist that covered the sky and scattered in the night sky. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. The Sword of Burial of Heaven hadn't even hit him, so how did he explode into a bloody mist that filled the sky? It was as if he had been blown apart by the Sword of Burial of Heaven. What kind of show was this? But in the next moment, Ji Tianxing guessed the black-robed divine lord's intention. That's right, escape. After the black-robed divine lord turned into a bloody mist, he immediately merged with the night sky and disappeared without a trace. Even when Ji Tianxing released his divine sense to cover a radius of 30,000 miles and carefully searched twice, he couldn't find any trace of the black-robed divine lord. Obviously, the black-robed divine lord had used the divine blood filling the sky to escape. Peace, readers, I'm He Wuhan. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, zero ads and multiple reading modes. Please follow. Book friends quickly follow. Chapter 2841. Ji Tianxing was very depressed. He originally wanted to kill the black-robed divine lord and eliminate the root of the problem. But at the critical moment, the black-robed divine lord used his trump card and escaped. Ji Tianxing could only take back the Burial of Heaven sword and muttered to himself, "Sigh. If I had already broken through to the Divine Lord realm, this person wouldn't have been able to escape." Indeed, if he reached the Divine Lord realm, he could borrow the power of the world to instantly seal a radius of tens of thousands of miles. No matter how capable the black-robed Divine Lord was, he wouldn't be able to escape this world. He would definitely be caught and killed. The Divine Lord realm was an even more unfathomable level than the Celestial God realm. It could control heaven and earth and many divine Tao laws, quickly forming a law domain. In his own domain, he was an invincible god and his combat strength would skyrocket. At this moment, Ji Tianxing really wanted to return to the Divine Tower to cultivate in seclusion and break through to the Divine Lord realm as soon as possible. However, he also knew that this idea was unrealistic. The Qi family's matter hadn't been resolved yet, so he couldn't go into seclusion for the time being. Moreover, what happened tonight was only the beginning of the storm. Next, there would definitely be an even more intense storm coming. The black-robed Divine Lord was an expert of the Blood Sword sect. First, he failed to seize the profound light cave, and then suffered such a huge loss under his sword. How could he let it go? Even if one used their toes to think, they would definitely retaliate even more fiercely. Ji Tianxing hurriedly suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart and began to search the battlefield. After a while, he found more than a dozen interspatial rings and hundreds of divine spark fragments. One of the rings actually belonged to the black-robed Divine Lord. After all, the black-robed Divine Lord wore the interspatial ring on his left hand. The left side of his body had been chopped into pieces. After putting away these things, Ji Tianxing didn't go to the Beast Valley and rushed back to Qingshan City as fast as possible. He guessed that the Qi family should have received the news and knew what happened in the Beast Valley. It was early in the morning, so the Qi family must have dealt with this matter overnight. Ji Tianxing's guess was right. Half an hour after the chaos in the Beast Valley, several guard captains sent a message and reported the news to the Qi family. The people who received the news were the 3 deacons of the Qi family. The person at the helm of the Qi clan was, of course, the patriarch Qi Tianlong. The person with the second highest status was naturally the young lord Qi Huangji. Below them were the 5 deacons. Among them, the grand deacon, the second deacon, and the 5th deacon were Qi Tianlong's brothers. The 3rd deacon and the 4th deacon had been loyal to the Qi clan for many years. Coincidentally, the chief deacon and the second deacon were both in the profound light cave, overseeing the general situation there. The 3rd deacon, 4th deacon, and 5th deacon were left behind to guard the Qi residence. 3rd deacon Jin Zhong and 4th deacon Jiao and were old officials who had been loyal to the Qi family for hundreds of years. The 2 of them were rather old, both of them had white hair. Therefore the 2 of them had always been prudent and conservative. He did not seek merit, but he sought not to make any mistakes. As for the 5th deacon, Qi Tianhe, he was Qi Tianlong's cousin. Qi Tianhe was ranked last and did not have much power. Normally he didn't pay much attention to the family business and career. The Qi clan's impression of him was that he was in secluded cultivation, greedy for pleasure and indulging in women. After the 3 deacons received the news, they gathered the backbone of the Qi clan and discussed countermeasures in the conference hall. The resplendent meeting hall was brightly lit. More than 20 of the Qi clan's backbone stood neatly in the hall, their expressions solemn and heavy. The 3 deacons sat at the head of the table, frowning in contemplation. Jin Zhong and Jiao and were full of worries and had been discussing countermeasures with the Qi clan's backbone. Qi Tianhe sat at the head of the table, but he did not speak much and had an indifferent attitude. The Qi clan's backbone had long been used to his style and did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. In any case, Qi Tianhe was the patriarch's cousin and had a noble status. Even if he did not do anything, the patriarch should discipline him. The Qi clan's backbone and the 2 deacons did not have the qualifications to say anything. Jin Zhong, who was wearing a purple robe, was a tall and sturdy old man with white eyebrows and white hair. He had a dignified square face and his eyes were bright and full of vigor. He was awe-inspiring without being angry. Looking at the Qi clan's backbone in the hall, he said in a low voice, "Just now we received a secret report from the mythical Beast Valley in the south of the city. A group of people in black attacked the mythical Beast Valley in the middle of the night, killing over 100 guards and destroying the entire mythical Beast Valley. Over 100 beasts and mythical beasts took advantage of the chaos and escaped. There were only 64 guards left in the mythical Beast Valley and they did their best to capture 24 mythical beasts." After Jin Zhong finished speaking, Jiaowen took over the conversation. He was a skinny old man with a dark face. His eyes were deep and sharp. "I have sent out 30 guards to form a temporary investigation team and go to the mythical Beast Valley to investigate the situation and treat the wounded. But the question is, where did those people in black come from? Why did they destroy the mythical Beast Valley? How are we going to catch up with the hundreds of mythical beasts that have escaped? The reason why I've gathered everyone here is to brainstorm. I hope that everyone can come up with a solution." After the 2 deacons finished speaking, the more than 20 backbone members in the hall began to whisper to each other. "How hateful! Who attacked the mythical Beast Valley? For over 100 years, the Qi clan has never been humiliated like this. No matter which force it is, they must pay a painful price. Alas, the family head and the future family head are not here and this happened. Isn't the mythical Beast Valley protected by all kinds of formations? How did those people in black get in?" Everyone was talking, but no one could give a reasonable suggestion. At this moment Qi Tianhe, the 5th deacon who had been keeping his head down, suddenly said, "The family head is far away in the Tianfeng County, dealing with the family business. He is already under pressure. Don't inform the family head about what happened tonight in case he is worried. Let's not worry about the origin of those people in black. This matter needs to be investigated slowly and it will take a long time. Our top priority is to treat the wounded, rebuild the mythical Beast Valley and find the escaped pets. We have to try our best to recover the losses so that we can explain to the family head when he comes back." The hall, which had been abuzz with discussion, quieted down. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Qi Tianhe. There was a mixture of surprise and astonishment in everyone's eyes. No one expected that Qi Tianhe, who had rarely cared about the family business, would step forward at this time. Moreover, what he said was quite reasonable. Jin Zhong nodded and said solemnly, "5th deacon, You are usually obsessed with cultivation and rarely care about the family business. However, you are still very attentive at this critical moment when the family is in danger. I agree with 5th Deacon's suggestion. Jiawen hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. So do I. Qi Tianhe nodded and said calmly, since both deacons agree, let's do it this way. Let's take action as soon as possible. We will rebuild the mythical Beast Valley and search for the escaped pets. Jin Zhong and Jiawen nodded at the same time and were about to give orders. But right then a voice came from the door of the hall. Wait. Chapter 2842. The sudden voice, which contained a powerful majesty, shocked everyone in the hall. Everyone was puzzled and turned to look at the door. Who was so bold? Who dared to barge into the meeting hall and interrupt everyone's discussion? Immediately, under everyone's gaze, a handsome young man in a white robe stepped into the hall. After seeing this person's face, the 3 deacons and many of the backbones were stunned. Then there were whispers in the crowd. It's the master? Why is young Master Tianxing back? Didn't he follow the young master to carry out a mission? Strange, the master is back, why didn't the young master come back? Everyone recognized that it was the master of the Qi family, young Master Tianxing. More than 20 backbones, including the 3 deacons at the head, all bowed to salute. Greetings, Lord Consecrator. Although Ji Tianxing was hired by the Qi family as an external aide. But in terms of status he was second only to the family master and the young master, and his status was higher than the deacons. Qi Tianlong and his son were not present, so he was the person with the highest status. While everyone was saluting, Ji Tianxing walked through the crowd and walked to the head. The 3 deacons quickly stepped aside and stood aside. Ji Tianxing did not stand on ceremony. He sat down and glanced over everyone with his majestic eyes. However, when he glanced at the 5th deacon, Qi Tianhe, there was an imperceptible coldness in his eyes. Qi Tianhe still kept his head down with a cold and indifferent posture. He did not react at all. At this time Jin Zhong bowed and asked, Young Master Tianxing, may I ask why you interrupted us? Are you not satisfied with the result of our discussion, or do you have other instructions? Everyone looked at Ji Tianxing waiting for his answer. Ji Tianxing did not beat around the bush and said directly, I don't want to waste time, so I will say it directly. There is no problem with the result of your discussion. You must rebuild the Valley of Mythical Beasts and search for escaped pets to minimize losses. But, before these 2 things are carried out, I have a more important matter that must be solved now. As soon as he said that, the atmosphere in the hall seemed to have frozen. Everyone's heart sank, feeling uneasy. Even Ji Tianxing, who had been lowering his head, secretly glanced at Ji Tianxing. Jiawen cupped his hands in greeting and asked, Sir Consecrator, may I ask what is so urgent? Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, eliminate the traitor. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. What? There's actually a traitor in our Qi clan. How is this possible? What is Lord Consecrator doing? How can we investigate the traitor at this time? The 20 or so core members all expressed their disbelief and found it hard to accept this matter. Jin Zhong and Jiawen saluted at the same time and advised, Consecrated Darren, the matter of the traitor is of great importance. You must be careful with your words and actions. That's right. This matter was related to the Qi clan's reputation, so they couldn't act rashly. They had to wait for the clan leader to return before dealing with it. Let's deal with the God Beast Valley first. Seeing that everyone was at a loss and trying to persuade them, Ji Tianxing said with a dignified expression, the God Beast Valley was attacked tonight and suffered heavy losses. It was caused by the traitor. Someone colluded with the enemy and betrayed the defenses of the God Beast Valley. Therefore, the group of black-clothed people easily broke the Divine Beast Valley's defensive array. They rushed into the valley and started a massacre, opening the defensive formation and releasing hundreds of pet beasts. Otherwise, with the defensive strength of the God Beast Valley, how could it have been destroyed and suffered such heavy losses in just a quarter of an hour? Jin Zhong, Jiawen, and many core members fell silent and pondered with complicated expressions. They had to admit that Ji Tianxing was right. The God Beast Valley was one of the Qi clan's painstaking efforts and was worth more than 1 billion divine stones. For more than 200 years, the Qi clan had built the God Beast Valley into an impregnable fortress without any problems. But tonight the God Beast Valley was attacked and almost turned into ruins. Also, this matter was over in a quarter of an hour. Wasn't this too fast? If someone hadn't leaked the defenses of the God Beast Valley, how could those men in black have been so successful? Thinking of this, everyone accepted Ji Tianqing's explanation. The more than 20 core members whispered to each other and secretly nodded in agreement. However, Jin Zhong and Jiao En looked at each other and communicated telepathically. They rejected this proposal at the same time. Master, we believe in your judgment. There is probably a traitor in the Qi clan. If the traitor didn't leak the secrets, the God Beast Valley wouldn't have suffered heavy losses. However, only the master can deal with the traitor in person. Master, only the master, the young master, you and the 5 deacons have access to the map of the God Beast Valley. It's not that we want to obstruct this matter, nor is it because we are guilty. It's just that this matter is too important. Those who are qualified to be traitors must be dealt with by the master himself. The 2 deacons objected, but Qi Tianhe remained silent as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Ji Tianqing's face was cold as he said in a dignified tone, "Because this matter is too important, I have to deal with it now. Otherwise, once the traitor escapes from the Qi family by tomorrow, who will be able to catch him?" Jin Zhong and Jiao En still wanted to refute. Ji Tianqing shouted coldly, "Without the master and the young master, who has the most power now? Tell me." The thunderous voice caused the entire hall to tremble. Everyone shrunk their necks. Jin Zhong and Jiao En could only lower their heads and answer truthfully, "Of course it's you." "Good." Ji Tianqing nodded and shouted coldly again, "I want to deal with the traitor now. Who dares to question me?" The whole hall was silent. No one dared to speak. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied and ordered in a deep voice, "Men, arrest the 5th deacon Qi Tianhe." As his voice fell, everyone raised their heads in unison and looked at him in horror. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Qi Tianhe, who had been lowering his head in silence, also frowned and stared at him gloomily. Even the few guards at the entrance were stunned, not daring to move an inch. "What are you waiting for? Are you deaf?" Ji Tianqing glared at the guards at the door and shouted coldly. The guards' bodies stiffened and they hurriedly entered the hall and walked towards Qi Tianhe. At this time Qi Tianhe suddenly sneered and said, "Deacon Tianqing, have you taken the wrong medicine? Are you crazy? I have never worried about the family business and am indifferent to wealth and fame. This is something everyone knows. But you slandered me in front of everyone and claimed that I am the traitor? Ah! Countless people in the city have heard that Deacon Tianqing is arrogant and domineering. You have been doing whatever you want because you are the young master. I didn't believe it before and was too lazy to care about these trivial matters. But now it seems that not only are you arrogant and domineering, but you are also doing whatever you want. You're simply spouting nonsense, vicious and vicious." End of chapter. Chapter 2843. Qi Tianhe stared at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile on his face. Did everyone see it? This is our Qi family's consecrator. He relied on the family head and young family head's favor and became lawless. In order to prove that he has great power and to show off, he actually slandered me in public. How heartless is he? More than 20 core members were panicking and discussing. A few guards stopped in their tracks, not knowing if they should arrest Qi Tianhe. Jin Zhong and Jiao En were also anxious, with beads of sweat on their foreheads. Both of them did not expect that when they were still having a discussion, everything was normal. When young Master Tianqing appeared, it immediately turned into this situation. He actually accused Qi Tianhe of being a traitor. To the Qi family, this was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. Jin Zhong and Jiao En's status was not high enough to handle this matter. Both of them could only plead for mercy and dissuade Ji Tianqing. "Sir Consecrator, you can't just label someone as a traitor." "That's right. The 5th deacon's character is obvious to everyone. Moreover, he is the family head's cousin. You should wait for the family head to return before you deal with this matter." Ji Tianqing looked at Qi Tianhe and sneered. "Looks like you have been hiding very deeply. You actually deceived everyone. However, don't hoot in front of me. I will immediately expose your true colors and make you admit your guilt." Once this was said, Qi Tianhe's eyes narrowed and a hint of fear flashed across his eyes. He sneered disdainfully on the surface, but he was quite vigilant in his heart. He thought to himself, "What does this kid mean? Could it be that he has already caught my weakness? Impossible. I have been hiding for so many years and even Qi Tianlong was deceived. He has only been in the Qi family for half a month, and he can already find evidence of my crimes? Impossible. He must be tricking me. Qi Tianhe regained his confidence and calmness. He sneered contemptuously. Sir Consecrator, how many days have you been in the Qi family? Why are you so eager to show off your power? I don't have any interaction with you. How did I offend you? You actually slandered me and slandered me as a traitor. You want to destroy me. Tonight I must have an explanation to prove my innocence. Otherwise I will definitely remonstrate with the clan head and ask the clan head to punish you, a sinner who has harmed the Qi clan. Ji Tianxing revealed a meaningful smile and said slowly, I know that no one believes that Qi Tianhe is the traitor. But now I will let you all understand why he betrayed the Qi family. Hearing this, the hall immediately quieted down. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing waiting for his answer. Even Qi Tianhe was full of confidence as he looked at him with a cold smile. Ji Tianxing explained unhurriedly. At that time, Qi Tianhe and Qi Tianlong were the most outstanding young disciples of the Qi family and also the candidates for the family head. However, Qi Tianhe's talent and aptitude were slightly weaker than Qi Tianlong's. Later on, everyone knew that Qi Tianlong was chosen by the old patriarch to inherit the position of patriarch. Qi Tianhe, on the other hand, had failed in the fight for the position. He appeared to be disheartened and suffered a heavy blow. In order to lower the patriarch's wariness, he pretended not to care about the family business and development. He was obsessed with the cultivation of the divine Tao and spent most of his time in seclusion. When he was not in seclusion, he was indulging in pleasure and sensual pleasures. He even deliberately sent people to smear his own name and make his reputation bad. 30 years later, the Qi family grew and became even more prosperous. The patriarch also firmly grasped the power, and the Qi family was harmonious. At that time, the patriarch felt that Qi Tianhe was no longer a threat. Seeing that he had neglected himself, he could not bear it and made him the 5th deacon. From then on, Qi Tianhe began to plot revenge. He pretended to be obsessed with women and fell in love with the Lu family's 3rd miss, acting out an enviable love. Then he married the Lu family's 3rd miss and established a relationship with the Lu family. In these years, he secretly interacted with the Lu family and used various methods to embezzle the Qi family's hundreds of millions of assets. Originally, he wanted to use the Lu family's power to gradually destroy the Qi family in 200 years. When the Qi family fell apart, he would replace it. However, in the fight for the Profound Light Cave, the Blood Sword sect cooperated with the Lu family. I defeated all the opponents and obtained the Profound Light Cave for the Qi family. Therefore we offended the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect and will definitely suffer revenge. Qi Tianhe immediately saw the hope of revenge and found an opportunity. He and the Lu family agreed to borrow the power of the Blood Sword sect to give the Qi family a heavy blow. In these days, the patriarch, the young patriarch, and I are not here. The 1st deacon and 2nd deacon are also guarding the Profound Light Cave. In the entire Qi family, his status was the highest. Therefore he began to act. Tonight he took the defensive map of the God Beast Valley and quietly left the Qi family. In a mountain in the southern suburbs, he gave the defensive map to the leader of the Black-Clothed Men, a divine monarch expert from the Blood Sword sect. Then Qi Tianhe quietly returned to the Qi family and waited for news. The divine monarch expert of the Blood Sword sect led more than 40 black-clothed experts to attack the God Beast Valley. Everyone already knows what happened next. After saying this, Ji Tianxing quietly looked at Qi Tianhe with a cold smile. The hall was deathly silent. Jin Zhong Jiaoan and more than 20 core members were all dumbstruck. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as they revealed expressions of disbelief. No one could believe that Ji Tianxing had figured out the ins and outs of the Qi family in just half a month. Moreover, what he said was logical and his reasoning was clear. Instantly, everyone believed half of it. Their gazes towards Qi Tianhe also became complicated, with some alienation and disgust. Qi Tianhe suddenly panicked. However, he still maintained his calm and even led the applause. Clap, clap, clap. A burst of crisp applause sounded in the hall. Qi Tianhe said with a cold smile, "Wonderful. The story told by Lord Consecrator spans several decades and is very vivid. It's really wonderful." Jin Zhong Jiaoan and the core members all had dumbfounded expressions. How can you still be happy when others have already identified you as a traitor? You even led the applause and praised the story for being wonderful? Are you admitting that you are a traitor? At this time the smile on Qi Tianhe's face disappeared as he shouted coldly, "But, Lord Consecrator, you can't just casually make up a story to slander me. Even if you make it sound extravagant, you have no evidence. If you can't produce evidence, then you are just making things up and slandering me. You and I are irreconcilable. I will let the Patriarch punish you severely." The two deacons and the core members immediately came to their senses as their gazes fell on Ji Tianxing. That's right. No matter how realistic his story was, there had to be evidence. Ji Tianxing revealed a confident smile as he slowly took out a spatial ring. Qi Tianhe, you really won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. Since that's the case, I will let you die with a clear understanding. Chapter 2844. Ji Tianxing was so confident. The atmosphere in the hall immediately became tense. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the spatial ring in his hand. Even Qi Tianhe was calm on the surface, but he was panicking inside. He vaguely felt that the situation was not good. Damn bastard. Did he really find some evidence? Thinking of this, he secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. At the same time, Ji Tianxing took out a translucent jade slip from the spatial ring. It was a palm-wide, foot-long jade slip with special symbols engraved on it. The deacons and the core members of the Qi family could tell at a glance that it was the Qi family's special insignia. Ji Tianxing held the jade slip in his hand and showed it to everyone. This spatial ring came from the leader of the black-robed men, the divine lord of the blood sword sect. I found this jade slip in the ring. And this jade slip recorded the layout of the Divine Beast Valley's defenses, as well as the method to open the array. Originally, the jade slip was hidden in the secret treasury of the Patriarch. But Qi Tianhe had ulterior motives and had been planning for a long time. He took advantage of the Patriarch's absence to steal it. Then he took the jade slip to a secret location in the southern suburbs and gave it to the Divine Lord of the Blood Sword sect. He is the culprit behind the destruction of the God Beast Valley. Ji Tianxing's tone was dignified and contained a resolute and unquestionable domineering aura. Qi Tianhe's face immediately became angry and he shouted with grief and indignation, "Nonsense! You're slandering me! You're slandering me!" Ji Tianxing ignored him and secretly used his spiritual energy to suppress him, causing him to feel dizzy and unable to speak. He continued, "Qi Tianhe made a deal with the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect to overthrow the Qi family. After they succeeded, the Blood Sword sect would obtain the Profound Light Cave and the Lu family would divide a portion of the Qi family's assets and businesses. Qi Tianhe would become the Patriarch and join the Blood Sword sect, becoming their lackey." The expressions of the two deacons and the 20 or so backbones changed dramatically once again. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Many people felt a chill run down their spines as they glared at Qi Tianhe with deep hatred. Qi Tianhe's methods were too vicious and ruthless. Being stared at by more than 20 sharp gazes, Qi Tianhe was so angry that his entire body trembled, but he could not make a sound. He tried his best but could only shout hoarsely, "No, it's not like that." Ji Tianxing still ignored him and shouted to the door, "Bai Long, show me the evidence." Following his words, Bai Long stepped into the hall with a jade plate in his hands. He walked in front of Ji Tianxing holding the jade plate with both hands and bowed as he presented it. Reporting to Master, this is something disciple just found in the 5th deacon's residence. Everyone's gazes landed on the 2-foot-long jade plate. Inside there was a set of black clothes, a dozen jade slips and a few special tokens. Ji Tianxing held up the jade plate and showed it to everyone. He said in a cold voice, "This is the black clothes Qi Tianhe wore tonight." These jade slips recorded all the accounts of the Qi family's assets that he secretly embezzled over the past few decades, as well as the records of his transactions with the Lu family. These special tokens were used to prove his identity when he secretly contacted the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect. After speaking, Ji Tianxing threw the jade plate to Bai Long. His gaze was as sharp as a sword and he glared at Qi Tianhe as he shouted, "Qi Tianhe, now that there are witnesses and evidence, how are you going to deny it? I will now impartially execute the law and kill you in front of everyone to punish the traitor." Qi Tianhe had been listening to him slander in front of everyone, and he had even taken out all kinds of evidence to support it. He was so angry that his face was ashen and his entire body was trembling. Unfortunately, he was suppressed by Ji Tianxing's power and could not defend himself. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. At this time Ji Tianxing suddenly withdrew his power. Qi Tianhe was no longer restrained. He immediately opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He roared at the top of his lungs, "Bullshit! You are slandering me. How dare you frame me? I don't know any of those bullshit tokens. You deliberately framed me. And those transaction bills, you also forged them. Who would be stupid enough to leave the bills at their residence? And leave the black clothes in their room? I put them in my ring and carry them with me. You are slandering me and distorting the truth. Do you think everyone is a fool?" Ji Tianhe shouted with hatred. His voice was like a bell and his roar shook the heavens and the earth, causing the entire hall to shake. After this violent and hearty scolding, the anger in his heart was vented, and his emotions gradually calmed down. Then he found that everyone in the hall was dumbfounded. Jin Zhong, Jiaoan and more than 20 core members were staring at him, dumbfounded. Their expressions and eyes were extremely strange. Even Ji Tianxing and Bai Long looked at him with pity. Ji Tianhe felt that something was wrong. When he recalled what he had just said, he was instantly stunned. His body stiffened and his expression froze. His right hand subconsciously retracted into his sleeve, wanting to take off his infinite space ring. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, Ji Tianxing suddenly clapped his hands. The crisp applause echoed in the hall. It was like a slap on Qi Tianhe's face again and again. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a smile and gave him a thumbs up. He said, "Qi Tianhe, you are really a man. You dare to admit what you have done. Everyone heard it just now, right? Qi Tianhe has already admitted his crime. The transaction bills and the black clothes are all hidden in his infinite space ring." No one answered. The hall was silent. However, the 2 deacons and more than 20 core members were full of hostility toward Qi Tianhe. They stared at him with hatred. Qi Tianhe was completely dumbfounded. He felt his body stiffen and his hands and feet were cold. Ji Tianxing reached out and picked up the jade plate. He threw it on the ground and sneered. "Qi Tianhe, you guessed right. I forged these. The black clothes and the token were all found randomly. The dozens of jade slips were also blank. There was no record at all. Bai Long didn't even go to your residence. You carried the evidence of your crime with you and hid it very well. I have only been in the Qi family for half a month. How could I find evidence of your crime?" After listening to Ji Tianxing's words, everyone felt a chill down their spines. Fear grew in their hearts. Everyone then understood. It turned out that Deacon Tianxing and Bai Long had put on a show to trick Qi Tianhe. However, their acting was too realistic. Not only did everyone not see through it, but even Qi Tianhe was stunned. That was why he fell for it. After all, everyone only knew that Ji Tianxing was powerful and ruthless. They did not know anything else. Qi Tianhe was also afraid that Ji Tianxing would distort the truth and directly kill him with a sword. Then he would have died too unjustly. That was why the situation had turned out like this. But no matter what, Qi Tianhe had already lost. He had lost completely. End of chapter. Chapter 28:45. The hall was dead silent. The atmosphere was stifling as if it had frozen. The 2 deacons and the other backbones were afraid of Ji Tianxing's schemes. They also hated Qi Tianhe's despicable and insidious ways. No one dared to look at Ji Tianxing. They could only glare at Qi Tianhe to vent their anger and hatred with their eyes. Qi Tianhe finally came back to his senses. He was extremely upset and blamed himself, but he was not reconciled to this. He pointed at Ji Tianxing and roared at the crowd, "Why are you looking at me like that? It's this bastard who is slandering me. You heard it just now. He has no evidence at all. Those are all fake. Are you blind? Or are you deaf? I'm not guilty. He's framing me." Qi Tianhe roared with a ferocious face and tried to defend himself. However, everyone's gazes towards him became colder and colder, and even revealed a strong sense of contempt and disdain. Qi Tianhe was about to go crazy. He glared at the crowd and tried to defend himself. "What do you mean? I've been in the Qi family for hundreds of years. Why don't you believe me? This bastard has only been here for half a month. How can you believe him? He's a spy. He's deliberately destroying the stability of the Qi family. He's the one who has ulterior motives and wants to destroy the Qi family." However, no matter how Qi Tianhe framed and slandered Ji Tianxing, the crowd remained unmoved. Ji Tianxing sat at the head of the table and watched his performance with a smile. He had no intention of stopping him. Bai Long could not stand it anymore. He shook his head in disdain and said, "Qi Tianhe, put away your clumsy performance. It's so embarrassing. Confess honestly and you might be able to keep your life. Don't show off your pitiful intelligence. Ji Tianhe was furious. He stared at him with bloodshot eyes and roared, "Shut up. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that?" Bai Long narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he sneered, "Ji Tianhe, you're finished." Ji Tianhe was even more furious and wanted to scold him again. At this time Jin Zhong and Jiawen had to say something. "Enough. Fifth Deacon, shut up." The two of them coldly cried out at the same time, causing the entire place to quiet down. Jin Zhong said expressionlessly, "Fifth Deacon, you have admitted your crime in public. There is nothing to say." Jiawen also said with a cold expression, "Fifth Deacon, the family head has treated you well, and the Qi family has not done anything wrong to you. Why did you collude with the enemy and plot against the Qi clan? Why did you commit such a heinous crime? Now that things have come to this, why don't you kneel down and admit your mistake? How long are you going to persist in your wrong ways?" Ji Tianhe was stunned for a moment, then he looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. "I understand now. The two of you are in cahoots with the consecrator. You have been bought over by him long ago. I refuse to accept this. Just the few of you are not qualified to convict me." Jin Zhong, Jiawen and more than 20 backbones all looked at Ji Tianxing. Among those present, Ji Tianxing had the highest status. It was up to him to decide how to deal with this matter. Jin Zhong cupped his hands in salute and said, "Sir Consecrator, this matter will be handled by you. We have no objections. However, I still suggest that you wait for the family head to return." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and interrupted him. He sneered and said, "There's no need to wait. It's a waste of time." As he said that, a destructive aura burst out from his body. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him, pressing down on Ji Tianhe. Ji Tianhe's legs suddenly went soft and he knelt down in the hall with a thud. His body was bent and his head was buried deep in his chest. His entire body was trembling violently. He refused to admit defeat and struggled with all his might. He wanted to raise his head and stand up. However, Ji Tianxing's aura was all concentrated on him. He was suppressed to the point that he could not move. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and the skin on his body was constantly cracking. Ji Tianhe roared in anger and pain. His voice was hoarse as he roared, "You bastard! I am the family head's brother. You have no right to punish me. Don't forget, you are just a dog raised by the Qi family." Ji Tianxing's face became even more gloomy. He stood up and walked in front of Ji Tianhe. He took out a token and handed it to him. "Ji Tianhe, take a good look at what this is." Ji Tianhe tried hard to raise his head. He only took one look at the token and his expression changed drastically. The young master's token. Jin Zhong, Jiawen and more than 20 core members also recognized the token. It was Qi Huangji's young master's token. This token represented that the young master was here in person, and he could make all the decisions. Other than the family head Qi Tenlong, no one else could go against him. After a moment of shock, everyone bowed in unison and said, "We will obey the honorable master's orders." Ji Tianhe's eyes widened, revealing a look of deep shock and despair. However, he was still unwilling to give up. He roared, "How could Qi Huangji's young master's token be in your hands? You must have forged this young master's token. You must have murdered the young master and taken the young master's token." Ji Tianxing put away the young master's token and sneered. "You are about to die but you are still so stubborn. You still want to bite me? You are too naive." Then he slowly lifted his right foot and stomped on Ji Tianhe's head. Bam! With a muffled thud, Ji Tianhe was trampled under his feet and prostrated on the ground. The ground of the entire hall trembled violently from the impact, and a crack appeared in the ground. Ji Tianhe was bleeding from all 7 orifices, and his entire body was trembling. He was humiliated to the extreme, and the anger in his chest was about to explode. Tears of blood flowed out of his eyes. Ji Tianxing took out the sword of burial of heaven and shouted angrily, "According to the Qi family's rules, those who collude with foreign enemies and betray the family will be beheaded in public, and their names will be erased from the family tree. Tonight the family head is not here, so I will execute the punishment on behalf of the young master." Then he raised the sword of burial of heaven and slashed it toward Ji Tianhe's neck. Arg! Ji Tianhe roared like a madman. Bastard! How dare you kill me? I am a disciple of the Qi family, the family head's cousin, and you are an outsider. You have no right to. However, before Ji Tianhe could finish his words, he stopped abruptly. Poof! A cold light bloomed and crimson-red blood splattered. Ji Tianhe's head was separated from his body, and he no longer made a sound. Blood spilled in the hall and dyed the ground red. The few backbones nearby subconsciously took 2 steps back, and they were so frightened that their bodies trembled. This young honorary master's methods were too ruthless, and his actions were too decisive. Then the hall was dead silent. Everyone lowered their heads and they did not dare to look at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianhe's corpse lay quietly on the ground, and his eyes were still wide open, unwilling to close in peace. Ji Tianxing held the sword of burial of heaven and pierced it into his head, picking out a colorful godhead. He used a secret technique to seal the godhead and put it into the space ring. Then he announced in a dignified tone, "The traitor has been eliminated and his accomplices will also be caught and punished according to the family rules. This matter will be handled by Jin Zhong. The rebuilding of the Divine Beast Valley and the search for the escaped Divine Beasts will be supervised by Jiaoan personally. As for Ji Tianhe's godhead, I will hand it over to the family head for him to deal with." End of chapter. Chapter 2846. Dealing with the traitor was a long story. But in fact Ji Tianxing only used an hour to deal with it. When he announced the end of the meeting, dawn had arrived and the sky was slightly brighter. Jin Zhong, Jiaoan and more than 20 Qi family members walked out of the meeting hall, still feeling like they were in a dream. What happened just now was too shocking for them. Many of them were still in a daze. No one had expected Reverend Tianxing's schemes and methods to be so unfathomable. His way of doing things was too ruthless and decisive, which made people terrified. Of course, Ji Tianhe was a traitor. This matter shocked everyone and they found it hard to believe. It even overturned their centuries-old impression. Everyone sighed in their hearts. The seemingly unambitious and frivolous Ji Tianhe actually betrayed the Qi family and even wanted to destroy it. And the seemingly outsider Tianxing, who had just joined the Qi family half a month ago, was the hero who saved the Qi family. This was simply too ironic. Human nature was really complicated. When the sun rose in the Hall of Offerings, Ji Tianxing sat in the study with his eyes closed, waiting patiently. At this moment, Bai Long stepped into the study and reported the situation. "Master, Deacon Jin Zhong has sealed off the southern courtyard and started investigating Ji Tianhe's accomplices. He found a lot of evidence in Ji Tianhe's residence. Deacon Jiao and also rushed to the Divine Beast Valley in the southern part of the city with hundreds of guards to carry out the mission. What happened last night has spread throughout the Qi family. Now everyone is talking about it and is extremely respectful to you." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, indicating that he already knew. Bai Long was a little angry and snorted coldly. "Those Qi family members don't know what's good for them. Master, you found the traitor and protected the Qi family's wealth and glory. It's fine if those people are not grateful, but they are actually talking behind your back, saying that you are ruthless and merciless like the god of death. They are very afraid of you." Ji Tianxing smiled faintly and said with an indifferent tone, "Why do I need their understanding and gratitude for my actions? Moreover, we're only staying here temporarily and won't be staying for long. Why should we care about their opinions?" Hearing this, Bai Long frowned and asked, "Master, are you planning to leave Qingshan City?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "This is inevitable, but not now." "When was that?" White Dragon asked. Ji Tianxing revealed a meaningful smile and said, "Of course, we have to wait until the right time." The White Dragon was stunned for a moment and did not pursue the matter any further. He had always had doubts in his heart. Now that he had nothing to do, he asked curiously, "Master, you didn't have any interaction with Ji Tianhe before and you didn't mention the traitor. Why did you bring up this matter last night and resolve it so quickly? How do you know that Ji Tianhe is colluding with the Lu clan and the Bloodsword sect?" He even described the process of their collusion clearly and vividly. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and chuckled. "Before last night I didn't know that there was a traitor in the Qi family. However, I found that someone escaped in the middle of the night with ghostly traces. So, I followed that person to the southern suburbs and secretly watched their transaction. At that time I suspected that there was a traitor in the Qi family, so I remembered that person's body shape, characteristics and aura." Bai Long suddenly understood and nodded. So when you returned to the Qi residence and saw Qi Tianhe, you knew that he was a traitor. Ji Tianxing nodded and then explained, after that I went to the Divine Beast Valley and personally killed the black-robed men, injuring the black-robed divine monarch of the Blood Sword sect. The black-robed divine monarch was seriously injured and left his ring on the battlefield. After I got the ring, I found a way to open it and found the defensive layout of the Divine Beast Valley. When I returned to the Qi residence, I recognized that Qi Tianhe was the traitor. Combining his life experience and the identity of his wife, I made up a self-justifying and plausible explanation. Bai Long was stunned. When you were in the main hall, you spoke so much eloquently. You exposed Qi Tianhe's experience, psychology and conspiracy clearly. Not only did those deacons and backbones believe it, but even I thought it was true. I didn't expect you to make it up casually. Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled. I'm not an omnipotent god, so how could I know everything about Qi Tianhe? Moreover, time was tight, so I was too lazy to collect evidence. So I made up a half-true and half-false story. As long as everyone thinks it's true, it's enough. Bai Long suddenly understood and continued, everyone was prejudiced by first impressions and was intimidated by your aura, so they thought that Qi Tianhe was the traitor. But Qi Tianhe knew that you were only half right and the rest was fabricated and slandered. He was very angry and eager to defend himself, but he couldn't refute your suppression. After you finished speaking, you withdrew your pressure. Qi Tianhe suddenly regained his freedom and vented his anger without any scruples, only wanting to defend himself. But he was too agitated and didn't calm down enough, so he let it slip in front of everyone. In this way he confessed without being pressed and would be doomed eternally. Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled. That's right. Bai Long held his stomach and laughed, full of admiration. Master, you're simply too awesome. You played Qi Tianhe in the palm of your hand and easily crushed his IQ. That guy endured for hundreds of years and finally got the chance to usurp the throne, but you destroyed it instantly. Now that I think about it, that guy is really pitiful. Ji Tianxing said indifferently, a pitiful person must have something hateful. Bai Long hesitated and asked, Master, time was tight last night, so you used this trick. Actually, there was still a risk to this brilliant plan. What if Qi Tianhe was astute and calm enough and didn't reveal any flaws? How do you plan to deal with it? Ji Tianxing waved his hand and replied indifferently, then don't talk nonsense with him, just kill him directly. Anyway, my position is the highest and I'm the strongest. No one will dare to stop me if I kill him in front of everyone. As for the evidence, I'll just send people to collect it later. Bai Long pinched his chin with his right hand and chuckled. Master is domineering enough. Qi Tianhe will die if he meets you. There's no way he can escape. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and ordered, let's not talk about this anymore. Enter the God Pagoda now. Master will personally go to the Profound Light Cave. Since the Blood Sword sect has already made a move on the God Beast Valley, they won't let go of the Profound Light Cave. If Master's guess is right, the Profound Light Cave will soon be in trouble. Bai Long thought for a moment and nodded repeatedly. Yes, Master's foresight is truly amazing. The Lu family and the Blood Sword sect colluded to deal with the Qi family. They could have split into two groups and acted at the same time. Let's hurry to the Profound Light Cave and hope to prevent the tragedy from happening. Chapter 2847. After White Dragon entered the Divine Tower, Ji Tianxing left the Qi estate. The God Beast Valley had just been attacked, so the Qi estate situation was a bit chaotic. Logically speaking, Ji Tianxing had to stay in the Qi estate to stabilize the situation. However, he was sure that the Lu family, Blood Sword sect, and the City Lord's estate would not attack the God Beast Valley again. Nor would they attack the Qi estate directly. Fighting in the city and attacking a noble family was defying the laws of the divine nation. The Blood Sword sect, the Lu family and the City Lord's estate were not that crazy. Therefore, the Qi estate and the God Beast Valley were safe for the time being. Only the Profound Light Cave and the Setting Sun Sea region hundreds of thousands of miles away were the most dangerous. When Ji Tianxing left the Qi estate, he used the Armillary Heaven secret technique to conceal himself and hide his aura. No one knew that he had left. The people of the Qi estate all thought that he was cultivating in seclusion in the Venerate court. Moreover, the Qi family was very respectful of him and did not dare to disturb him in the Venerate court. After a while, Ji Tianxing left Azure Mountain City. He flew high into the sky and rushed north at his fastest speed, heading straight for the Setting Sun Sea region. Late in the morning. on an island not far from the profound light cave in the setting sun sea region. A black-robed old man nearly 3 meters tall with a thin face was standing on a pitch-black reef. Although he wore a mask and a bamboo hat, a gray-white goatee could still be seen. The deep eyes under the mask stared at the sea in the east, waiting quietly. There was a blurry shadow at the end of the sea. It was the island where the profound light cave was located. Beside the black-robed old man stood a tall and handsome young man. This person was also wearing a pitch-black robe and a silver mask that covered his true face. There was a dark red mark on the forehead of the mask. It was a blood-red sword filled with a baleful aura. An old man and a young man stood side by side, looking at the profound light cave in the distance. Behind the two stood 8 black-robed experts, all of whom were at the 6th or 7th level of the heavenly god realm. At this time, the young man opened his mouth and said, "For an eldershire, when our people evacuated the profound light cave, didn't we tamper with a few things and leave some hidden dangers? Why is it that after such a long time nothing has happened in the profound light cave, and the Qi family is still mining the ore vein as usual?" The black-robed old man called Consecratorshire stroked his goatee and said in a deep voice, "Young city lord, you're not the only one who is puzzled. Logically speaking, the hidden dangers in the profound light cave should have erupted long ago. The Qi family will suffer at least a few hundred casualties. They won't be able to continue mining, so they can only ask for our help. That way we can negotiate with the Qi family and take the initiative." Unfortunately, everything was normal in the cave of profound light and nothing unexpected happened. This old man suspects that the Qi family has an expert helping them, pointing out the right path and removing the hidden danger long ago. It was obvious. These two people were the City Lord's Mansion's Consecratorshire and the young City Lord Yuanjia. However, both of them and the guards behind them had covered their faces and disguised themselves as members of the Blood Sword sect. Yuanjia pondered for a moment and asked, "What kind of expert can the Qi family have? Could it be that the Ning family of the Sky Snow County City sent an expert to help?" Consecratorshire thought for a moment and nodded slightly. "That's the only possibility. However, we've been monitoring the Qi family and didn't notice the arrival of the Ning family. This matter is very strange. This old man suspects that the consecrator of the Qi family." Before he could finish, Yuanjia's expression changed, and deep hatred surged out of his eyes. "Impossible. The consecrator of the Qi family is just a brat who hasn't even reached the divine monarch realm. What ability does he have? How could he remove the hidden danger in the profound light cave?" Ever since Yuanjia lost to Ji Tianxing, he had been living in humiliation, and his temper had become much more irritable. He hated Ji Tianxing to the bone and would never admit that Ji Tianxing was stronger than him. Consecratorshire understood his thoughts and didn't say anything, quickly changing the topic. "Young City Lord, you don't have to worry about the previous matter. It doesn't matter that the hidden danger has been removed. This old man sneaked into the profound light cave last night and already buried more than 30 divine light bombs. That group of elite guards just now have already sneaked into Profound Light Island and will detonate those bombs soon. You just wait and see. The profound light cave is about to collapse and several ore veins will be destroyed. At that time, not only will the Qi family suffer heavy casualties, the profound light cave will also fall into chaos." Yuanjia's anger subsided a little and he said with a cold smile, "That's good. The Qi family's people are too rampant. They must be taught a bitter lesson. After the profound light cave is blown up, we'll take the opportunity to kill our way in, kill all the Qi family's people and take back the profound light cave. But what's a little troublesome is that the profound light cave has been destroyed. If we want to continue mining the ore veins, we'll have to spend a lot of time and effort to clear them out." Hearing this, Consecratorshire couldn't help frowning. He waved his hand and explained, "Young City Lord, we're only responsible for destroying the profound light cave and giving the Qi family a heavy blow. We absolutely can't slaughter the Qi family's people, and we can't take over the profound light cave now. Don't forget that we're now disguised as the Blood Sword sect's people. Once we take over the profound light cave, we have to use the name of the Blood Sword sect. Isn't that working for the Blood Sword sect?" Yuanjia quickly shook his head and said, "How can that be? We'll put in effort and manpower. How can we let the Blood Sword sect take advantage of us?" Consecratorshire nodded and said, "That's right. Since we can't use the name of the Blood Sword sect, we have to use the banner of the City Lord's Mansion. But in this way, won't we be admitting to the world that it was the City Lord's mansion that destroyed the profound light cave and the Qi family? The City Lord's mansion will become the target of public criticism, and may even be punished by the laws of the Divine Empire and turned into ashes. Yuan Jie frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Then what should we do? After destroying the profound light cave, we withdraw from this place and watch with folded arms?" Consecrator Shi nodded slightly and said, "Of course. The City Lord has secretly formed an alliance with the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family. We'll carry out the first step of the plan, disguise ourselves as the Blood Sword sect's people, destroy the profound light cave and create chaos. The second step is for the experts of the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family to kill the guards and craftsmen of the Qi family and occupy the profound light cave. The third step is for the City Lord's mansion and the Lu family to join hands and send out craftsmen, miners and guards to jointly mine the profound light cave. The Blood Sword sect wants 60% of the profits, while the Lu family and we each get 20%. Of course, the duration of this agreement is only 10 years. Hearing this, Yuan Jie immediately frowned, his expression turning grave. "Father, when did you form an alliance with them to discuss this matter? Why am I completely unaware?" Consecrator Shi smiled and said, "Just a few days ago. At that time you were cultivating in seclusion." Yuan Jie didn't pursue the matter and continued to ask, "You mean that in this plan we'll be responsible for destroying the profound light cave and providing the mining technology and craftsmen? The Lu family will be responsible for providing manpower including guards and miners, and the Blood Sword sect won't participate in the mining process and will only be the scapegoat, but will get 60% of the profits?" Chapter 2848. Consecrator Shi was silent for a moment before he nodded in agreement. "That's right. That's roughly what you mean." Yuan Jie was not stupid. After learning about the agreement between the three parties, he understood the reason. Our City Lord's mansion has the technology to mine ore veins, as well as our understanding of the profound light cave. This is our bargaining chip. Although the Lu family did not have much ability, they could provide a lot of manpower. Moreover, they're the middlemen who can form an alliance with the Blood Sword sect. However, the status of our families is not high enough for us to show our faces in public. That's because we can't withstand the punishment of public opinion and the laws of the Kingdom of God. The Blood Sword sect, on the other hand, was most suited for such dirty work. Even if the Qi family and the other aristocratic families knew that the Blood Sword sect was behind this, there was nothing they could do about it. After all, the Blood Sword sect has a very high status in the Divine Nation. They have the confidence to dissolve the sanctions of the Divine Nation's laws and suppress public opinion. Consecrator Shi hurriedly nodded his head and said with a gratified expression, "Young City Lord is indeed intelligent. If the City Lord knows about this, he will definitely be very pleased." Yuan Jie was still a bit worried. "Venerable Shi, you also know that the Blood Sword sect openly slaughtered a noble family and seized their assets. This is a serious violation of the Divine Nation's laws. This kind of thing could be big or small. If the remnants of the Qi clan were to climb up to the Ning clan of Xianxia County and go to the capital to complain, even if the Blood Sword sect is one of the 6 great sects, I'm afraid that they won't be able to withstand the punishment of the Divine Nation and resolve the wrath of the monarch." Consecrator Shi gently shook his head and sent a voice transmission, "Young City Lord, you don't have to worry about this matter. The 4th elder of the Blood Sword sect revealed a secret to the City Lord. Just 2 years ago, the Blood Sword sect had already climbed up to the royal family and submitted to a noble and important figure. Since the Blood Sword sect dared to do this, it meant that they had enough confidence. Even if the remnants of the Qi clan go to the capital to complain, this matter will still be left unsettled." After saying that, Consecrator Shi revealed a meaningful smile on his face. Yuan Jie stared blankly for a moment, then came to a realization and a big smile appeared on his face. Then I'm relieved." Consecrator Shi nodded and said with a smile, "So, let's wait and watch the show." As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd fell silent. At the eastern end of the sea, the blurry black shadow suddenly shook a few times. Then an earth-shattering rumble sounded from 30,000 miles away. Yuan Jie and Consecrator Shi both saw that the profound light island trembled violently a few times, bursting with divine flames that soared into the sky. Moreover, huge waves that were thousands of feet high were also stirred up in the eastern sea, and they were spreading at an extremely fast speed. Success. Consecrator Shi sneered complacently. Yuan Jia also clenched his fists and nodded. The show is about to begin. The two of them waited expectantly. About half an hour later, a group of black shadows flew out from the bottom of the ocean and landed on the rocks by the shore. There were a total of 12 elite experts. They were all dressed in black and wore masks. There was a blood sword symbol on their foreheads. Everyone bowed in unison and reported to Chief Shi. Reporting to my lord, the mission has been successfully completed. Consecrator Shi nodded in satisfaction and said, "Very good. When we return, this old man will reward you heavily." After he finished speaking, a black-clothed expert stepped out, took out a broken 5-colored crystal, and presented it in front of Chief Shi. Reporting to my lord, after the profound light cave was destroyed, this subordinate found this crystal near the 9th mine. Chief Shi took the 5-colored crystal and examined it in his palm. This broken crystal was only the size of a walnut, but it was crystal clear and flashed with a 5-colored divine light. It contained an extremely majestic divine power that was dozens of times more than ordinary divine stones. Chief Shi immediately narrowed his eyes and revealed a shocked expression. He exclaimed in a low voice, "This is a divine crystal. This is a divine crystal that is 100 times more valuable than divine stones. A divine crystal contains 100 times more power than a divine stone. Moreover, divine crystals are even purer and have a unique advantage. The divine power inside can be directly refined. Not only that, divine crystals have hundreds of effects, such as healing, cultivation, setting up formations, refining." Yuan Jia also stared at the divine crystal with a burning gaze and said excitedly, "The power and effect of divine crystals far surpasses divine stones. Logically speaking, a divine crystal is worth 100 divine stones. But in fact, divine crystals are very rare and difficult to circulate in the market. Even 500 divine stones couldn't buy a single divine crystal. Only the top nobles and powerhouses are qualified to use divine crystals as currency and cultivation resources." In fact, Yuan Jia owned a divine crystal. It was a birthday gift from the city lord. He had been treasuring it and occasionally took it out to play with. According to the city lord, when he was studying and cultivating in the capital, he made a few noble friends. He spent 30,000 divine stones to buy a few divine crystals from one of his friends. And this was because they had a good relationship that the other party was willing to trade with him. If it were others, even if they offered a higher price, the other party would not be willing to sell. Chief Shi held the broken divine crystal and asked in a low voice, "You found this divine crystal near the 9th mine? There's a divine crystal in the profound light cave? Why didn't we find it before? What's going on?" The black-clothed expert hurriedly explained, "Reporting to my lord, after the 9th mine was blown up, gravel and slag burst out. This divine crystal was mixed in with the gravel. I saw that this divine crystal was dazzling and full of divine energy. It must be extraordinary, so I brought it back for you." Chief Shi's eyes widened and his goatee trembled with excitement. "So, doesn't that mean there's a lot of divine crystals hidden in the 9th mine? And there's a divine crystal mine under the 9th mine?" Hearing this, Yuan Jia's breathing quickened and his face turned red. "A divine crystal mine? Oh my god. If that's true, how many divine crystals would it produce?" Chief Shi turned to look at him and said in a low voice, "Even if it's just a small mine, it can produce millions of divine crystals. What kind of astonishing wealth was that? Congratulations, young city lord, we're going to have a meteoric rise." Yuan Jia was even more excited. His blood was boiling and he even felt unbearably hot. "Ha! If we can have millions of divine crystals, we can become a top noble family. At that time, not to mention Green Mountain City, we can even become the lord of Tianfeng City." In Yuan Jia's mind, the image of divine crystals piling up like a mountain appeared. He even fantasized about becoming a top noble family and controlling the entire Tianfeng City. However, Chief Shi was a wily old fox and his temperament was even steadier. He quickly calmed down and persuaded, "Young city lord, this is just this old man's speculation. We can't be happy too early. We'll only know the details after the Blood Sword sect takes over the profound light cave. Moreover, we're an alliance of 3 forces, led by the Blood Sword sect. Even if there's a divine crystal mine in the profound light cave, we can't take it all for ourselves. Most of it will have to be given to the Blood Sword sect." End of chapter. Chapter 2849. The sun was high in the sky. Tianxing was flying in the sky above the setting sun sea region. At this time he was only 100,000 miles away from the profound light cave. I hope I came in time and nothing happened to the profound light cave. Tianxing murmured and prayed in his heart. But at this time he suddenly heard a loud, muffled sound coming from the sky in front of him. Boom! It was like a muffled thunder that exploded in the sky and reverberated. Not only that, Tianxing also vaguely saw a divine light and flame in the sky 100,000 miles to the north. He could immediately determine. The muffled sound came from that area. An earth-shattering explosion had occurred there. 100,000 miles to the north. Isn't that the island where the profound light cave is? Tianxing thought of the profound light cave and his expression changed. His eyes flashed with anxiety. Damn it! I was one step too late. Did something happen to the profound light cave? Filled with anxiety, he sped up and flew towards the profound light cave. Whoosh! He turned into a blurry shadow and flickered in the sky as he flew towards the north. At the same time he released his divine sense and covered 30,000 miles around him to investigate the situation. The profound light cave was definitely the work of the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family. At this time the people of the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family must be near the profound light cave. Not long after Tianxing arrived near the profound light cave. When he was 40,000 miles away from the profound light island, his divine sense detected the auras of several heavenly god experts rushing at the bottom of the sea. He hurriedly hid his tracks and quietly investigated the situation at the bottom of the sea. He soon saw clearly. They were 12 black-clothed experts who had just escaped from the profound light island and were fleeing towards the island in the west. They were all dressed in black and wore masks to hide their true faces. But they all had the mark of a blood sword on their foreheads. Tianxing immediately frowned and his eyes became cold. It was indeed the bastards of the Blood Sword sect who secretly blew up the profound light cave. Killing intent rose in his heart. He followed the 12 black-clothed experts and rushed to the island in the west. Not long after, the group arrived at the barren island covered with reefs. 12 men in black flew out of the water and landed on the island, reporting the situation to Yuanjie and Consecrator Shi. Only then did Tianxing realize that there were actually 10 experts on the island. They were all wearing black clothes and masks. He could tell with a single glance that they were all from the Blood Sword sect. 2 people, one old and one young, stood on the reef. The old man was tall and sturdy with a grizzled goatee under his mask. His aura was unfathomable, his strength actually reached the Divine Lord realm. That youth was tall and had an extraordinary bearing. His strength was also close to the Divine Lord realm. When Tianxing saw the 2 people clearly, he couldn't help but frown as he muttered in his heart. Why do those 2 from the Blood Sword sect look so familiar? Or have I seen them before? He had originally planned to charge onto the island and exterminate the 22 men in black. But there was something fishy about this. He suppressed his killing intent and hid in the clouds, secretly observing the island. He saw the 12 black-clothed men reporting the situation to the old man. When the old man and the black-clothed youth learned that their plan had succeeded, they sneered with satisfaction. Then one of the black-clothed men took out a shattered divine crystal and handed it to the old man. Everyone discussed the source of the divine crystal and the possibility that there was a divine crystal mine in the profound light cave. Tianxing, who was hiding in the clouds, heard everything clearly. At the same time he recognized the black-clothed old man and the youth and identified them. Yuanjie and Consecrator Shi from the City Lord Mansion? It's actually the 2 of them? I didn't expect the City Lord Mansion to ally with the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect to deal with the Qi family. In order to seize the profound light cave, they actually used such despicable methods. Tianxing didn't hear much, but it was very important. The words 3 forces and the Blood Sword sect has seized the profound light cave allowed him to understand many things. He could no longer suppress the killing intent in his heart and quietly took out the sword of burial of heaven, brazenly attacking. Sword rain. Tianxing pointed the sword of burial of heaven at the sky and roared. Immediately, nearly 10,000 starlight dots appeared in the sky and fell like a meteor shower. 10,000 giant starlight swords, carrying the power to destroy heaven and earth, flew toward the island. The area within 1,000 miles was covered by invisible sword intent, forming a sword Dao domain. At this moment, Consecrator Shi Yuanjia, and the others were still standing on the reefs of the island. They had already completed the plan to blow up the Profound Light Cave. Next they just had to wait for the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family to attack and occupy the Profound Light Cave. But at this moment, 10,000 giant starlight swords fell from the sky and covered the entire island. The invisible and terrifying slaughter sword intent sealed the area within 1,000 miles. Everyone subconsciously looked up at the sky. Seeing the scene in the sky, everyone's expression changed dramatically, revealing shock and anger. Get out of the way. Don't panic, counterattack. The 20 black-clothed experts were all shocked by the sword intent. Their hearts were filled with fear and they fled in panic. Yuanjia and Consecrator Shi were still able to keep calm. They shouted loudly and ordered the guards to join forces to resist. The next moment, 10,000 giant swords fell and drowned the entire island. Boom, 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 boom. An earth-shattering sound suddenly exploded between heaven and earth, shaking the sky. The barren island within a radius of 200 miles was torn apart by the giant swords on the spot, splashing out endless dust and gravel. More than half of the island collapsed, leaving only a few dozen miles of ruins, which were also drowned by the monstrous waves. More than half of the 20 black-clothed experts were killed by the giant starlight swords on the spot. 14 of them were smashed to pieces and even their godheads were shattered. They died directly. The remaining 6 managed to escape with their lives, but they were also heavily injured and fell into the sea in a sorry state. Even Yuanjia was hit by a few giant swords and suffered heavy injuries. His black robe and protective armor had been blasted into pieces. His hair was disheveled and he was covered in blood as he lay in the ruins, gasping for breath in pain. Consecrator Shi was the strongest, having reached the 3rd level of the Divine Lord realm. He had withstood the attacks of the giant swords and only suffered light injuries. His black robe was tattered and stained with blood. But even so, when he saw the scene in front of him he was incomparably shocked and furious. Bastard! Where did this bastard come from, daring to oppose our blood sword sect? Consecrator Shi looked up at the sky, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth as he angrily cursed. Even now he was still calm, not forgetting to pretend to be an elder of the blood sword sect. Then Ji Tianxing appeared in the sky above the ruins. He looked down at Consecrator Shi and Yuanjia with a cold smile. Bastards of the blood sword sect, you're actually so despicable. Back in the arena, you pretended to be disciples of the Lu family and were cut down by my sword. Your skills were inferior so you used such despicable methods. Ji Tianxing recognized Consecrator Shi and Yuanjia, but he didn't expose them. After all, the Qi family's public enemies were the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family. For the time being, it wasn't appropriate to have a falling out with the City Lord Mansion, let alone start a frontal war. End of chapter. Chapter 2850. Yuanjia and Consecrator Shi also recognized Ji Tianxing. It's you. Consecrator Shi's pupils constricted, revealing an expression of disbelief. He couldn't accept this result at all. The person who killed 16 guards and injured him and Yuanjia in one move was actually a consecrator of the Qi family. Not long ago, Consecrator Shi personally hosted the martial arts competition. He remembered clearly that Ji Tianxing was only at the heavenly god realm at that time, not the divine lord realm. And now, Ji Tianxing was still at the heavenly god realm, not the divine lord realm. But his combat strength was more than 20 times stronger than before. How could Consecrator Shi believe this? He was stunned at that time, a storm raging in his heart. Consecrator Shi's reaction was still calm. But Yuanjia's reaction was even more intense and real. He glared at Ji Tianxing as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth was wide open but he couldn't make any sound. After a long time he roared hysterically, "Impossible! How can it be you? I don't believe it. It's only been half a month, how can you be so strong?" Yuanjia's pride and self-confidence were completely crushed and scattered on the ground. Even if he was beaten to death he couldn't accept this reality. Back then he lost to Ji Tianxing in the arena, and he regarded it as a great humiliation. He firmly believed that Ji Tianxing was inferior to him. He was the most dazzling genius. Because Ji Tianxing killed him halfway, he didn't understand the situation and underestimated the enemy, which was why he lost miserably. He kept comforting himself like this and he could still preserve the pride in his heart. But now, The facts proved that Ji Tianxing was more than 20 times stronger than him, killing him like slaughtering a chicken. How could someone as proud and arrogant as him accept this? For a moment, Yuan Jia was so ashamed that blood gushed out of his nose and mouth, and his will was on the verge of collapse. Ji Tianxing didn't waste time. He sneered with a mocking face. Blood sword sect animals, you've committed all kinds of crimes and are heartless. Now I'll kill you on behalf of Tianxing. As he spoke, he opened the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda. Swish, swish. White Dragon, Yun Yao, Jiku and the others appeared in the sky. They had been waiting for a long time. Without saying a word, they attacked Yuan Jia and the 6 black-clothed experts. Before Yuan Jia could see their faces clearly, he was enveloped by a sky full of sword shadows. The 6 injured black-clothed experts were also drowned by the colorful light of the divine spell. Rumble. Bang 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 bang. The 2 sides began to fight fiercely in the ruins and in the sky. The 6 black-clothed experts were relatively weak and they were also seriously injured. They were soon forced into a desperate situation and were killed by Yun Yao and Jiku one after another. Yuan Jia was also beaten back by the White Dragon. His injuries were getting worse and worse and his life was at stake. Consecrator Shi's heart was burning with anxiety as he immediately acted to save Yuan Jia. However, just as he was about to attack the White Dragon, he was stopped by Ji Tianxing. "Old bastard, your opponent is me." Ji Tianxing let out a low roar as he waved his sword and launched a fierce attack on Consecrator Shi. Consecrator Shi had no choice but to use all his strength to defend. After the 2 exchanged 3 moves, Consecrator Shi was forced to retreat and fly towards the sea in the distance. He could only take out his natal divine artifact and fight with Ji Tianxing with 2 divine hooks. However, this could only delay his defeat. He was still no match for Ji Tianxing. He was beaten back continuously and his injuries were getting worse quickly. 20 breaths later, Ji Tianxing and Consecrator Shi flew thousands of miles away from the island. At this time, the 6 black-clothed experts had already been killed by Yun Yao and Jiku. Not even their bones were left. Yuan Jia was also beaten very badly. He was running away in a sorry state. White Dragon chased after him with murderous intent. Yun Yao and Jiku also started to intercept him. Soon Yuan Jia was in a desperate situation. He was about to die under the joint attack of the 3. At this critical moment he actually tore off the mask on his face and shouted angrily, "Stop. All of you stop. I'm not a disciple of the Blood Sword sect. I'm the young city lord of Qingshan City, Yuan Jia. You can't kill me. Otherwise it'll be a public rebellion. The Qi family will also suffer the wrath of the city lord mansion and be reduced to ashes." Yuan Jia was forced into a dead end. He actually announced his true identity in order to survive. This was very shameful and would make the city lord mansion lose face. However, in order to save his life he couldn't care less. Consecrator Shi, who was thousands of miles away, also stiffened when he heard Yuan Jia's roar. He revealed a bitter smile. His heart was filled with sorrow as he muttered to himself, "Young city lord, oh young city lord, how can you be so spineless? By announcing your true identity in public, you're admitting that the city lord mansion colluded with the Blood Sword sect to harm the Qi family's property. Not only will this smear the city lord mansion's name and embarrass the city lord, it will also affect our plan. If the Qi family uses this to complain to the county city and the king, our city lord mansion will be finished." At this moment Consecrator Shi was somewhat disheartened. The city lord was so farsighted. How could he have such a useless son? Consecrator Shi could understand that Yuan Jia had no choice but to do this to save his life. However, doing this was too shameful and stupid. Consecrator Shi sighed inwardly. Forget it, forget it. As long as the young city lord can save his life, so be it. He thought that it wouldn't be a problem to save the young city lord's life first and then plan to deal with the Qi family later. However, the next scene caused his expression to change drastically. His entire heart fell into an ice cellar. Bai Long, Yun Yao and the others were stunned for a moment, frowning as they stared at Yuan Jia. Then White Dragon shouted in a righteous tone, "Bastard. Don't try to fool us. The city lord mansion is the parent of Qingshan City. How righteous, fair and selfless are you? You bastard of the Blood Sword sect, how dare you pretend to be the young city lord and smear the city lord mansion's reputation? You should be cut into pieces." After that, Bai Long, Yun Yao and the others didn't give Yuan Jia a chance to explain. They attacked even more ferociously. Bang bang bang. Rumble. Dozens of dazzling divine abilities and consummate skills with destructive power drowned the despairing Xianxia. He was no longer spared. He was dismembered on the spot and exploded into a mist of blood and powder. Even his godhead was shattered by Jiku's spear, and more than a dozen fragments flew out. The young city lord Xianxia was killed just like that. He died unjustly and sullenly. He was clearly the young city lord, but he pretended to be a disciple of the blood sword sect and schemed against the Qi family. In the end, his scheme was seen through and he was also in a desperate situation. In order to survive, he had to reveal his true identity. However, the other party was even more ruthless. They thought he was a disciple of the blood sword sect and killed him directly. What the hell was this? Was there anything more wrongly accused than this? In the sky above the sea 10,000 miles away, Consecrator Shi witnessed Xianxia's death with his own eyes. His body immediately turned cold and his heart was filled with despair. He didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be so ruthless. He didn't give them a chance to live and directly killed them all. End of chapter. Chapter 2851. Consecrator Tianxing. Are you crazy? You actually killed the young city lord. This is a disaster. The Qi family is finished. Consecrator Shi came back to his senses and glared at Ji Tianxing, his eyes spitting fire as he roared and cursed. Ji Tianxing was still attacking fiercely. He looked at Consecrator Shi with disdain and sneered, "Old bastard, you're from the blood sword sect, yet you dare to impersonate the city lord? Don't try to quibble. This seat will take Tianxing's place." Consecrator Shi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "That's the young city lord Xianxia. You fought him before. How can you pretend not to know him?" Ji Tianxing curled his lips in disdain. "Bah! How can you fool this seat with such petty tricks? He's a disciple of the blood sword sect who disguised himself as Xianxia. You still want to deceive this seat? Dream on." After saying that, he sped up his attacks and erupted with even more violent power. Consecrator Shi was beaten back again and again. His injuries were even more miserable and he was already covered in blood. In his anger, he tore off the mask on his face and roared, "Little bastard, open your eyes and see who this seat is. This seat is a consecrator of the city lord's mansion, and I presided over the martial competition. You say the young city lord is a fake, but am I a fake as well? If you stop now, there's still room for negotiation. Otherwise, the city lord's mansion will be irreconcilable with the Qi family, and the Qi family will be destroyed." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and sneered with disdain. "You're Consecrator Shi? Why don't you say you're the city lord? Anyway, your face is covered in blood and your body is covered in wounds. I can't see your original appearance anymore. No matter what you say, this seat won't believe you. I'll kill you." Consecrator Shi was completely mad with anger. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was furious and glared at Ji Tianxing with bloodshot eyes. "Little bastard. You're playing dumb. You clearly recognized us, but you want to kill us all. You're determined to go against the city lord's mansion. You're dead and so is the Qi family." Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to cut off his right arm and sneered, "That's right. Before I made my move, I already recognized the two of you. But so what? You pretended to be disciples of the blood sword sect, so I'll beat you at your own game and kill you all. What's wrong with that?" In any case, the Qi clan had already formed a grudge with the blood sword sect, so there was no need for them to feel pressured by another blood debt. As for the city lord mansion, you formed an alliance with the Lu clan and the blood sword sect in order to destroy the Qi clan. Why should I give you face? Not only you and Xianxia, soon I will kill the city lord. If you can't be the city lord, then let the Qi family be the city lord. Everything Ji Tianxing said was enough to shock the entire Tianfeng county. However, his tone was very relaxed, like the clouds and the wind. Consecrator Shi was both shocked and angry. There was even a trace of fear in his heart. He stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief and shook his head repeatedly. "You're crazy. You and the Qi family are both crazy. How dare you? How dare you be so reckless?" As he roared, blood spurted from his mouth. Ji Tianxing sneered indifferently. "You've already attacked the Qi clan and wanted to destroy them. What else do I not dare to do? Besides, I don't feel any pressure or guilt when I kill the God clan." Consecrator Shi was stunned again. He couldn't figure out what those words meant. However, he didn't need to think too much about it. A giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth fell from the sky and slashed at him. His divine body collapsed on the spot, exploding into billions of pieces and a bloody mist that filled the sky and scattered on the sea. Even his quintessence shattered into a dozen pieces and scattered in the sky. Consecrator Shi, a third-level divine lord, died just like that. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing waved his hand, grabbed the dozen quintessence fragments, and put them into his interspatial ring. He put away the sword of burial of heaven, turned around and flew toward the ruins of the island. Bai Long Yunyao and the other two had finished their battle and were cleaning up the battlefield. Ji Tianxing arrived above the ruins and started cleaning up the battlefield. He said, "Put away the fragments of black clothes and masks. Those are all evidence that will be useful in the future." The four worked together and cleaned up the battlefield in just 100 breaths. More than 100 quintessence fragments, 22 interspatial rings, and a dozen sets of black clothes and masks were all put into Ji Tianxing's interspatial ring. This battle was very fruitful. It wasn't just the quintessence fragments, divine stones and resources in the interspatial ring. Most importantly, the black clothes and masks were the blood sword sect's belongings. They were all evidence that would be very useful in the future. Then Yun Yao, Bai Long and the others entered the divine tower again. Ji Tianxing left the ruins alone and went to Profound Light Island. The Profound Light Island was currently in chaos. On the island, with a circumference of a few hundred miles, several mountain ranges had collapsed and huge cracks had appeared. The center of the island was the most damaged. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The Profound Light Cave at the bottom of the cliff was even more devastated. Smoke and dust filled the sky. The flat land at the bottom of the cliff was the workshop for refining ores and refining divine stones, as well as the warehouse and living quarters. Half an hour ago, several underground mines exploded and destroyed more than half of the Profound Light Cave. This flat land was also affected and huge cracks appeared on the ground. Many houses collapsed and the workshop was damaged. Hundreds of miners and craftsmen were seriously injured. The entrance to the underground mines was blocked by a large amount of earth and rocks, and smoke kept rising. At the time of the explosion, there were thousands of miners working in the 12 underground mines. There were also hundreds of Qi family guards supervising the work in the mines. Mines number 9, number 7, number 3 and number 1 exploded at the same time, causing the collapse of all 4 mines. More than 300 miners and dozens of guards were killed on the spot. Even their corpses were buried deep in the mines by the dust and rocks. There were also dozens of miners and guards who were lucky enough to survive. But they were all seriously injured and were still trapped in the blocked mines, waiting for rescue in despair and helplessness. The entire Profound Light Cave was in chaos. 2 deacons led 200 guards and miners to dig out the blocked mine entrance and try to rescue the injured in the mines. The mining work had stopped. Everyone was involved in the excavation and rescue work. They were very busy. Under such circumstances, the defensive power of the Profound Light Cave was extremely weak. It was practically non-existent. But at this moment, the originally clear sky was suddenly covered by dark clouds. A black cloud thousands of miles wide came from the south and stopped in the sky above Profound Light Island. The surging black clouds carried an enormous pressure as they enveloped the entire Profound Light Island. A sharp and bloody killing intent spread from the black cloud and lingered in the hearts of countless people. Immediately, everyone felt their hearts grow heavy. They had a bad feeling. They were suppressed to the point that they had difficulty walking, breathing, and circulating. Their divine power was not smooth. Countless people looked up at the sky and stared warily at the black cloud. Then everyone saw hundreds of black-clothed people fly out of the black cloud. End of chapter. Chapter 2852. Swish. Swish, swish, swish. Nearly 100 black-clothed experts flew out of the black clouds. Like dumplings, they fell from the sky and landed around the Mystic Light Cave. Those black-clothed experts were clearly well-trained. In a short span of 10 breaths, they occupied the key positions around the Mystic Light Cave. They formed a huge circle surrounding the Mystic Light Cave. Only 10 black-clothed people were left in the sky above the Mystic Light Cave. The 2 people in the lead both had Divine Lord Realm strength. Their auras were majestic and domineering. One was more than 10 feet tall, built like an iron tower with palms as large as fans. This person wore a loose black robe and a bronze ghost mask. He had a head of white hair that reached his shoulders. This white-haired divine lord was clearly the leader of the group. Not only was his aura the strongest, but his divine power aura was also filled with killing and bloody aura. Standing beside him was a short and fat middle-aged man. This person also wore a black robe and a black iron mask, unable to see his anger. Under the mask, only a pair of small squinted eyes were revealed, flickering with a sharp cold light. Apart from these two divine lord experts, there were still 8 black-clothed experts behind them. Their strength had all reached the 8th level of the celestial god realm. These people's actions were neat and uniform. Their entire bodies were filled with strong killing intent. It was obvious that they were elites who had undergone special training. The black clouds pressed down. The encirclement was complete. The invisible pressure of the divine array already enveloped the mystic light cave. The mystic light cave, which was originally noisy, immediately quieted down. Everyone stopped trying to rescue. They all drew their weapons and quickly formed a formation, assuming a defensive posture. The 2 deacons' faces were gloomy, showing anxiety and worry in their eyes. The 2 stepped into the sky, facing off with the 10 black-clothed people 1,000 feet away from them. Although the other party came menacingly and was led by 2 divine lord experts. These 2 deacons were extremely worried, but on the surface they could maintain calm. After all, they were both Qi Tianlong's cousins, direct descendants of the Qi family. In the past 200 years, they had personally experienced the development of the Qi family and also experienced countless storms. Even if the 2 of them were not as smart and capable as Qi Tianlong, they would not disgrace the Qi family. The Grand Deacon looked at the 2 black-robed divine emperors and cupped his hands. I am Qi Tianxing, the Grand Deacon of the Qi family. The second deacon also cupped his hands and bowed. I am Qi Tianchen, the second deacon of the Qi family. After exchanging greetings, Qi Tianxing said in a low voice, Everyone, this is Profound Light Island. According to the agreement of the 6 great clans, our Qi clan has won the martial competition. For the next 10 years, Profound Light Island will be our Qi clan's property, and no one will be allowed to invade it. Qi Tianchen continued, no matter where you come from or what your purpose is, please abide by the agreement and think twice before you act. Just now there was an accident in the Profound Light Cave. There was a collapse. We are trying our best to treat the wounded and unblock the tunnel. At this juncture we don't have the time or energy to entertain you. Therefore, no matter what business you have, please leave Profound Light Island. The interactions between the aristocratic families were always so complicated and hypocritical. Even though the 2 of them clearly knew that someone had deliberately blown up the Profound Light Cave to create chaos. This group of black-clad men before Xiaochen did not come with good intentions. They wanted to take this opportunity to snatch the Profound Light Cave. However, they could not say it out loud. They could only express their attitude in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, hoping that the other party would retreat. Even though the possibility of the other party leaving Profound Light Island was 0. The white-haired divine emperor, who was the leader, narrowed his turbid eyes. He stared at the 2 deacons, his withered old hands behind his back. He grinned coldly and said, Ha! 2 immature brats, things have already come to this and you still want to play dumb? Don't you know why this old man has brought people here? Hearing this, the 2 deacons frowned. They secretly gripped the hilts of their swords, accumulating divine power in their bodies. On the flat ground below, hundreds of guards, craftsmen, and miners also gripped their weapons, ready to fight at any time. The white-haired divine emperor directly ignored everyone's vigilance. He looked at the 2 deacons with sharp eyes and said in a dignified tone, You are both smart people. This old man doesn't want to waste my breath. If you don't want to be buried here, then obediently give up on the Profound Light Cave and leave this place. You should know that the Profound Light Cave is a treasure land that your Qi clan can't encroach on. As soon as his voice trailed off, he unleashed an earth-shattering amount of Qi that headed towards the 2 attendants. Puff. The 2 deacons' expressions changed. They immediately bent over and blood spurted out of their noses and mouths. They were only at the 9th level of the divine realm. How could they resist the pressure of a divine emperor? Without even lifting a finger, the other party had caused them to suffer internal injuries. What kind of valiant strength was this? Even so, the 2 deacons stubbornly held their heads high and refused to back down. 70 years ago it was our Qi clan who discovered this treasure land. Now we have won the martial arts competition and rightfully own this treasure land. Why should we give it away? Although you are divine emperors and we are no match for you, we are still Qi clan members. However, we are the disciples of the Qi clan. Even if we die here, we will not back down. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin's sonorous and resolute tones spread throughout the entire mine. Hundreds of guards, craftsmen and miners of the Qi clan all held their heads high and stood together against a common enemy. At this moment, the short and fat divine emperor in a black robe sneered and said, Qi Tianxing Qiying, you two brothers are quite courageous. Unfortunately, it's useless no matter how courageous you are. Whoever's fist is bigger will own this treasure land. Let me give you one last piece of advice. If you don't leave this place, you will all be turned into ashes. The man's voice was very unpleasant. Sounded like the cry of a male duck. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin were stunned for a moment. Their expressions changed drastically as they shouted angrily, Lu Jiucheng. It's you bastard. Lu Jiucheng. How can you be so despicable? Obviously, the short and fat divine emperor in a black robe was the head of the Lu clan, Lu Jiucheng. Now that he had the backing of the Bloodsword sect, he was flushed with success and his ego was inflated. Even though he was wearing a black robe and a mask to disguise himself as a member of the Bloodsword sect, he didn't bother to change his voice, which was why the Qi brothers recognized him. Anyway, he was confident that victory was in his hands. Today there was the 4th elder of the Bloodsword sect and 30 disciples of the Bloodsword sect. Together with the 70 experts of the Lu clan, it was enough to crush the Qi clan and take over the Dark Light Cave easily. Lu Jiucheng was exposed in public, but he didn't feel embarrassed or deny it. He looked at the two deacons with a smile and said coldly, So what if it's me? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. The Qi clan is weak, but you want to take control of the Dark Light Cave and use it to soar into the sky? After today, the Qi clan will be turned into ashes and will cease to exist. Kneel down and surrender now and be my dogs. Maybe you can save your lives. Chapter 28:53. Lu Jiucheng, you bastard. You'll die a horrible death. Even if we die, we won't bow down to you. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin were enraged, and their killing intent soared to the sky. Lu Jiucheng sneered disdainfully. The white-haired divine lord didn't want to waste any more time. He shouted, Since you insist on dying, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his left palm and struck out a 5-colored palm shadow towards the two deacons. His right hand formed a seal and sent out a blood-colored fist light towards the entrance of the mine. Bang! Boom! The white-haired divine lord's fist light and palm shadow didn't hit the two deacons, the guards and the craftsmen below the cliff. This was because the mystic light cave was protected by a monarch-grade divine array. A 5-colored light barrier with a radius of 100 miles covered the empty space below the cliff and the entrance to the mine. The palm shadow and fist radiance collided with the grand formation, causing an earth-shattering boom to erupt. Fragments of divine light burst out and filled the sky. The entire mystic light island trembled violently, and huge waves rose from the surrounding sea. 2 cracks appeared on the huge 5-colored light barrier, and countless cracks extended in all directions. Although the Qi family members inside the light barrier weren't injured, they were still trembling. But everyone was shaken to the point that they staggered left and right, letting out anxious cries. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin hurriedly gave orders. Everyone worked together to support the defensive array. Go all out to stop the bastards of the Lu family and the Bloodsword sect. As the two shouted, they led a large number of guards, craftsmen and miners to inject divine power into the defensive array. They clenched their teeth and held on. The 2 cracks on the light barrier quickly healed as the defensive array was replenished. Seeing this, the white-haired divine lord sneered disdainfully. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. He raised his palms again, forming a mysterious divine art and unleashing his ultimate skill. Blood sword slashes the heavens. When the white-haired Sir God's divine power was accumulated to the peak, he let out a loud bellow. He slammed his palms down and a 3,000-meter-long blood-colored sword appeared in the sky. The giant crimson sword slashed toward the 5-colored light barrier with the power to split open the heavens. Boom! A deafening explosion erupted, resounding through the heavens and spreading for tens of thousands of miles. A 3-meter-long and 3-meter-wide gap appeared on the sturdy and thick multicolored light barrier. Around the gap, dense cracks extended out. Lu Jiucheng immediately became spirited and shouted excitedly, "Everyone listen to my order. Attack the defensive formation with all your power." The hundreds of black-clothed experts around the cliff waved their divine weapons and used all kinds of secret techniques to attack the five-colored light shield. Bang bang bang. Rumble. Divine art shadows that blotted out the sky poured down like raindrops, smashing onto the five-colored light shield. Lu Jiucheng didn't stay idle either. His hands formed a divine art as he used a secret technique. 4 five-colored giant swords fell from the sky like meteors and crashed into the defensive formation. Boom. Dong dong dong. Under the leadership of Lu Jiucheng and the white-haired godlord, all the black-robed men attacked crazily. How could the monarch-level divine formation protecting the mystic light cave withstand such a fierce attack? In the blink of an eye, the five-colored light shield within 100 miles was riddled with holes and cracks. In the end, the white-haired godlord used his secret technique again and slashed out 2 heaven-splitting blood blades. With a loud bang, the five-colored light shield couldn't withstand the attack and exploded on the spot. An incomparably violent shockwave exploded at the bottom of the cliff, sweeping out for hundreds of miles. Suddenly, hundreds of disciples of the Qi family were blown away and fell to the ground with blood spurting out. They let out painful screams. Even Qi Tianqing and Qi Tianchen were bleeding from their 7 orifices and fell from the sky into the ruins. Haha, the defensive formation is broken. Everyone, kill everyone in the Qi clan. Don't even leave a chicken or dog alive. Lu Jiucheng laughed proudly as he raised his arms and gave the order to attack. The hundreds of black-clothed experts around the cliff all shouted excitedly as they waved their weapons and attacked the mystic light cave below. The white-haired divine lord stood proudly in the sky as he looked down at everyone with an indifferent expression. He had a dignified posture as if he despised all living beings. The defensive formation was broken and the Qi family had no power to resist anymore. There was no need for him to do anything. Lu Jiucheng and the hundreds of black-clothed experts could kill all the disciples of the Qi family and quickly occupy the mystic light cave. Of course, it was the best time for the white-haired godlord to show off. However, just as the black-clothed experts were cheering and attacking with murderous intent, the members of the Qi family were full of despair and they shouted angrily. A black shadow that blotted out the sun suddenly fell from the sky and smashed into the cliff with a boom. The earth-shattering sound made everyone feel dizzy and their blood was in a mess. The entire island was shaken to the point of bouncing up and down, creating countless ravines. Huge waves that were hundreds of feet high rose up from the surrounding sea, surging to the heavens. In an instant, the 100 miles of flat land under the cliff and the entrance of the mine were covered by the black shadow. The hundreds of black-clothed men, the white-haired godlord, Lu Jiucheng and the 8 elites were all blocked. Everyone subconsciously stopped attacking and frowned as they looked at the black shadow. It was a pitch-black colossus that was over 10,000 feet tall. It had 9 floors and 8 corners, revealing an ancient and powerful aura. It was also emitting a supreme power that could suppress the world and overlook thousands of worlds. It was a pitch-black and mysterious ancient pagoda. Although the defensive formation of the mystic light cave was broken, this divine tower replaced the formation and covered the entrance of the mine, protecting all the disciples of the Qi family. The white-haired godlord immediately frowned and his eyes became serious. Black Tower. Is this a monarch-level or a king-level divine weapon? Lu Jiucheng's expression changed drastically. He stared at the black divine tower with his mouth agape. His eyes were filled with shock. Whose divine tower is this? Why did it suddenly appear to save the mystic light cave? Qi Tianlong? No, Qi Tianlong doesn't have such a divine weapon. Besides, Qi Tianlong is still in the Tianfeng city. He can't make it back in time. The hundreds of black-clothed experts were also stunned. They stopped in the sky and looked at the mysterious black tower. They were all confused and looked at each other. After a while, the trembling island finally calmed down. The dust that covered the sky also dissipated. The black divine pagoda was still standing there, motionless, and not a single person could be seen. The people of the Qi family had disappeared and there was no movement in the mystic light cave. The white-haired godlord and Lu Jiucheng couldn't hold back their doubts and started to send people to check. It's just a broken tower. Don't worry. Just destroy it. Lu Jiucheng waved his sleeve and gave an order. Then the 70 black-clothed experts of the Lu family waved their swords and used their secret divine powers to attack the divine tower. Bang 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 bang. The divine light shadows that blotted out the sky bombarded the divine tower one after another, causing a deafening explosion. But the divine tower didn't move and there wasn't even a trace left. Chapter 2854. Boom. The surging five-colored divine flames formed a destructive shockwave that swept through the area within a radius of 1,000 miles. Over 100 black-clothed experts couldn't dodge or block in time and were hit by the five-colored divine flames. Only the sound of ping 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 was heard and everyone was sent flying. More than 50 experts were instantly burned to ashes by the five-colored divine flame. They died silently. The remaining 40 or so experts were also burned to ashes. Their bodies curled up and fell into the surrounding ruins. Their bodies were burned and their godheads were heavily damaged, but they were lucky enough to survive. Scattered in the surrounding ruins, they let out miserable wails and rolled on the ground in pain. Without a doubt, these people were crippled and no longer had the ability to fight. Only the white-haired divine lord Lu Jiucheng and the 8 elite experts had retreated in advance and escaped this disaster. Seeing this scene, everyone's scalp went numb and they revealed an incomparably shocked expression. What kind of divine weapon is this? It's actually so strong? A supreme-grade monarch-grade divine weapon? And a low-grade king-grade divine weapon? The white-haired divine lord's eyes widened and he revealed a look of deep shock. The elite disciples of my Lu family were all killed in an instant. Lu Jiucheng screamed crazily, his heart bleeding. In order to join the Blood Sword sect and divide the benefits of the profound light cave, he had done his best without holding back. He had mobilized all the outstanding disciples of the Lu family to gather these 70 people and disguised them as disciples of the Blood Sword sect. He had thought that it would be easy to take the profound light cave with the Blood Sword sect. But he had never imagined that all the disciples of the Lu family would be killed in the blink of an eye. Even if things went smoothly and he could take the profound light cave and get 20% of the benefits, it couldn't make up for the loss. If all the outstanding disciples of the Lu family died, they would soon be eliminated and become a mediocre family. Thinking of this, Lu Jiucheng was so angry that he almost went berserk. However, he had seen the terror of the divine pagoda with his own eyes and didn't dare to act rashly. He could only look at the white-haired divine lord and ask for help. Fourth elder, this divine pagoda is strange, you see. The white-haired divine lord stared at the divine pagoda with a burning gaze and bellowed, "Everyone back off." Lu Jiucheng was relieved of a heavy burden. He hurriedly brought the 8 elite experts and retreated 200 miles into the sky. The white-haired divine monarch slowly raised his palms and activated all his power. He struck out 2 gigantic blood-red claws that blotted out the sky and the sun, grabbing at the black divine pagoda. Bang! Bang! With a muffled sound, 2 giant blood-red claws grabbed the black divine tower from both sides. Rise! The white-haired divine lord roared angrily as he raised his palms. He wanted to use his supreme divine power to uproot the mysterious black tower and move it away. However, the mysterious black tower stood in place, not moving at all. It was as if it had taken root and connected with the entire island. I refuse to believe that I can't move this divine pagoda. The white-haired divine monarch bellowed and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had used a secret technique to increase his strength, instantly increasing it by 50%. Bang! He let out another ferocious roar, erupting with earth-shattering power. However, the divine pagoda remained motionless. The white-haired divine monarch's face flushed red. It was useless even if he pushed his power to the limit. At this moment, the divine pagoda suddenly flashed with black light and launched a counterattack. Kaboom! There was a loud and clear explosion. The 2 giant blood-red claws suddenly collapsed, exploding into blood-red fragments that filled the sky, splashing in all directions. Bang bang! Bang bang! Billions of blood-red fragments hit the surrounding cliffs and mountain peaks. Suddenly, the mountain peaks within a radius of 200 miles were flattened. The mysterious black light spread out and also sent the white-haired divine monarch flying. He tumbled and flew 100 miles away, crashing into a collapsed mountain peak and was buried by endless soil. When he struggled to climb out, his hair was disheveled and his face was covered in blood. He was in an extremely sorry state. Puff! The white-haired divine monarch spat out a mouthful of blood. He covered his chest and coughed for a long time before gradually recovering and flying back into the sky. Lu Jiucheng and the 8 experts quickly surrounded him, looking at him with concern and asking about the situation. Fourth Elder, how are your injuries? Fourth Elder, are you okay? The white-haired divine monarch waved his hand, indicating that everyone did not need to worry. Why are you panicking? This kind of injury is nothing to this old man. He shouted with a dignified expression, full of energy. But just as he finished speaking, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, his internal organs had been injured by the mysterious black light, and his injuries were somewhat severe. The 8 elite experts were all true disciples of the Blood Sword sect. They were still calm, silently guarding the white-haired divine monarch. Lu Jiucheng's heart was in a mess. He was angry and anxious and asked in a trembling voice, Fourth Elder, where did this divine tower come from? Why is it protecting the mysterious light cave? Did a high-level divine monarch make a move? What should we do? A single mysterious black tower had caused heavy casualties, and even the 4th Elder had suffered heavy injuries. If the owner of this divine tower was really a high-level divine monarch, the consequences would be unimaginable. Not only would they not be able to seize the mysterious light cave, but they would also be trapped here and wiped out. When he thought of this, Lu Jiucheng already had some thoughts of retreating. The 4th Elder saw through his thoughts and glanced at him coldly. He said in a deep voice, If anything happens, this old man will take care of it. What are you panicking for? If you are afraid, then hurry up and scram. The Blood Sword sect was high and mighty, and the 4th Elder's status was revered. He originally looked down on small characters like the Lu family, and now that he was seriously injured, he had a belly full of anger. Of course, he would not be nice to Lu Jiucheng. Lu Jiucheng was scolded until he was embarrassed. He hurriedly squeezed out a smile and said apologetically, 4th Elder, please calm down. This Lu is loyal to the Blood Sword sect. How can I abandon you? This Lu is just worried. The 4th Elder said expressionlessly, There is nothing to worry about. This divine tower is strong, but it protects the mysterious light cave and will not attack. As for high-level divine monarchs, if such an expert really made a move, he would have shown himself long ago. Hearing this, Lu Jiucheng was much more at ease. He stared at the divine tower and nodded. That's right. This divine tower's appearance is strange. It is only guarding the mysterious light cave, but no one has appeared. As long as we don't attack it, it doesn't seem to take the initiative to attack. The 4th Elder nodded slightly. Don't blindly attack the divine tower anymore. Treat the injured first and meditate to recover. This old man wants to study it properly and see what is going on with this divine tower. Understood. Lu Jiucheng nodded and hurriedly flew to the nearby ruins to treat the Lu family disciples who were on the verge of death. The 8 elite experts also spread out to rescue the injured Blood Sword sect disciples. The 4th Elder sat cross-legged in the air and consumed a divine pill to treat his injuries. He had already made up his mind. After treating his injuries, he would think of a way to deal with the mysterious Black Tower. If possible, he would take the mysterious Black Tower for himself. Chapter 2855. In fact, the 4th Elder was right. The person controlling the divine tower wasn't a high-level divine lord. In fact, he wasn't even a divine lord. Because this divine tower was the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. When the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family attacked the Mystic Light Cave, Ji Tianxing finally arrived. He knew that even if he, Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others went all out, they wouldn't be able to stop the attacks of the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family. Once the battle started, the Qi family would definitely suffer heavy casualties. He, Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others weren't a match for the 4th Elder, so they would definitely be injured. So he changed his mind at the last minute. He asked Ji Ku to control the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower to cover the entire Mystic Light Cave and keep the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family outside. With the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower's defense, even 10 Divine Lords wouldn't be able to break through. The Mystic Light Cave was safe. Meanwhile, inside the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower, Ji Ku was sitting on the Fey God altar in the Origin Divine Array on the 5th level. Her eyes were closed and her hands were forming a seal to control the Divine Tower. 5-colored divine flames surrounded her body and gave off a mysterious and powerful energy, making her seem unfathomable. On the 1st level of the Divine Tower, in the Dark Hall, Yun Yao, Bai Long and the others were saving the Qi family members. When the Mystic Light Cave's defense array was destroyed and the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect attacked, the Qi family members were filled with despair. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianchen, who had sustained heavy injuries, were also prepared to die together with the Blood Sword sect disciples, as if they were facing death calmly. But at that moment the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower fell from the sky. The desperate Qi family members were instantly taken into the Divine Tower and out of danger. Only then did the Qi family members come back to their senses. They were in an unfamiliar environment and were a little panicked and worried at first. Everyone gathered together, vigilantly guarding their surroundings. Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianchen were the backbone of the group, so they were able to remain calm. Under their orders, the Qi family guards, craftsmen and miners gradually calmed down. Then Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and the others appeared. When everyone saw Ji Tianxing's appearance, they were suddenly enlightened. Their hanging hearts were finally at ease. Everyone revealed a joyful expression after surviving a calamity and bowed to Ji Tianxing to express their gratitude. Ji Tianxing comforted everyone with a few words, telling them not to worry and to focus on recuperating. With the protection of the Divine Pagoda, the Profound Light Cave was safe. No matter how strong the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family were, they couldn't invade the Profound Light Cave. However, everyone had to stay in the Divine Pagoda for a while. Ji Tianxing wanted to enter the Profound Light Cave, clean up the collapsed ruins and rescue the trapped wounded. Only after dealing with this matter would he be able to deal with the Blood Sword sect and the Lu family. Everyone in the Qi clan trusted and respected him, so they naturally had no objections. Hence, those who were injured stayed on the first level of the Divine Pagoda to recuperate. The uninjured guards, craftsmen, and miners followed him into the Profound Light Cave. He used the laws of earth and divine abilities and secret techniques to quickly clear up the collapsed ruins. The entrance of the Profound Light Cave was cleared and everyone hurriedly entered the underground mine. Next, Ji Tianxing led everyone in the Qi clan to clean up the 4 collapsed mines. A large amount of earth and rocks were cleared out and the collapsed mines were cleared up. The wounded and corpses buried in the ruins were also rescued by everyone. In a short hour the cleaning and rescue work was completed. Originally, according to the Qi clan's estimation, this work would take at least 2 days to complete. However, Ji Tianxing only needed an hour to settle the matter. This was simply an inconceivable miracle. Everyone's respect and worship for Ji Tianxing reached the peak. After everything was ready, Ji Tianxing ordered everyone in the Qi clan to clean up the mines and wrap up the work. He went to the 9th mine alone to investigate the divine crystal vein. The 9th mine was very ordinary and unremarkable. In the 13th year of the City Lord's Mansion's control of the Profound Light Cave, they had excavated this mine. So far this mine had been excavated for 57 years. The craftsmen and miners of the City Lord's Mansion only found 3 ordinary divine crystal veins in this mine. Divine crystal veins were supreme treasures that no one dared to imagine. Not long after the Qi clan took over the Profound Light Cave, Ji Tianxing came to inspect the mines and remove the hidden dangers left by the City Lord's Mansion. When he inspected the 9th mine, he didn't find anything unusual. But now, as soon as he entered the 9th mine, he sensed an extremely rich divine power aura surging out of the mine. The mine, with a radius of 10 miles, was filled with extremely rich divine power. Even the air was filled with wisps of 5-colored divine power. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and flew into the depths of the mine, arriving at a mine with a radius of 10,000 feet. He remembered very clearly that this mine was only 3,000 feet wide and less than 1,000 feet deep. But now, the mine was more than 3 times larger and more than 3,000 feet deep. There were no traces of excavation at the edge of the mine. It was all torn open by violence. Obviously, the people of the City Lord's Mansion buried a divine light bomb here. After the explosion, not only did the 9th mine collapse, but it also blasted out a large amount of divine crystal ores. Ji Tianxing looked down at the mine and observed with shining eyes. There was a huge divine stone vein in the mine, which was full of rough and ordinary divine stone ores. However, among the countless coarse ores, there were dense multicolored crystals. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing came to a sudden realization. I see. No wonder the people of the City Lord's Mansion didn't find any divine crystals after excavating for more than 50 years. I didn't expect this mine to be even deeper underground, with a large number of divine crystals wrapped in ordinary ores. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out several beams of divine light, striking at several ordinary oars. Crack, crack. With a few cracking sounds, 6 basin-sized oars were torn apart. Suddenly, more than a dozen walnut-sized 5-colored divine crystals burst out of the oars and scattered on the ground. Ji Tianxing picked up those divine crystals and used the devouring divine ability to quickly devour the power of the divine crystals. After a while, more than a dozen divine crystals disappeared. The heaven-mending orb left half of its divine power and transferred the other half to him. He was surprised to find that these divine crystals were very pure, and their divine power was incomparably pure. There were almost no impurities, and during the process of devouring and refining, there would be no waste. The Qi family is really lucky, Ji Tianxing murmured and revealed a smile. He didn't waste any more time and hurriedly landed at the bottom of the mine and sat cross-legged on the mine. He began to circulate his energy and use the devouring divine ability. His palms emitted black light, and 2 pitch-black vortexes appeared, pressing on the mine. Swoosh! A powerful devouring power immediately enveloped the mine and crazily absorbed the power of the mine. Whether it was the power of ordinary divine stones or 5-colored divine crystals, they were all devoured by his palms and poured into the heaven-mending orb. After being purified by the heaven-mending orb, half of the power entered his body, helping him quickly increase his strength. In a short span of 2 hours, his strength had doubled. Chapter 2856. Ordinary veins mixed with large amounts of divine crystals were indeed powerful. In the past, Ji Tianxing would need a few hours to double his strength after devouring ordinary veins. Now it only took him 2 hours to double his strength. Even he himself was surprised and incredulous by such an exaggerated speed of improvement. Time passed quietly and the devouring continued. With every 2 hours that passed, his strength would increase by 1-fold. Half a day later, his strength had increased by 6 times. But this was only the beginning. He continued to devour and his strength continued to increase. The divine power contained in the veins was as vast as the sea, as if it was endless. Ji Tianxing was intoxicated by the wonderful feeling of rapidly increasing his strength and forgot about the passage of time. Unknowingly, an entire day passed. His strength had increased by 12 times. If it was an ordinary vein, its strength would definitely be weakened by several times. If the Qi family's craftsmen and mine workers were slightly more attentive, they would be able to detect some clues. However, this vein contained a large amount of divine crystals. After being devoured for an entire day, his strength did not decrease significantly. Previously, he had planned to stabilize at the peak of the heavenly god realm for a while. However, this was a rare and excellent opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, who knew when he would be able to encounter it again? Therefore he did not care so much. First, he would devour the energy of the vein and increase his strength. Moreover, Lu Jiucheng and the 4th elder of the Bloodsword sect were still outside the divine tower, and they were still guarding it. Every 4 to 6 hours, they would use different methods to probe and attack the divine tower. Ji Tianxing only wanted to increase his strength as soon as possible and become strong enough to deal with them. It had been 2 days since the divine tower descended. On the 1st floor of the divine tower. After 2 days of rest, the Qi family members' injuries had stabilized. Even Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin's injuries had healed greatly. Everyone gathered together and whispered to each other. It's been 2 days. Why is there no movement outside at all? Yeah. It's been 2 days. I wonder if the Bloodsword sect and the Lu family have left? Tianxing hasn't shown up for 2 days. What is he doing? I heard that Tianxing has not come out since he entered the mine. I heard from the guards that the collapsed mine and ruins have long been cleaned up. The injured miners and guards have also been rescued. That's strange. Since the matter in the mine has been resolved, why hasn't Tianxing made a move yet? The people of the Bloodsword sect and the Lu family definitely won't leave so easily. Are we just going to waste time like this? Let's go find the 1st deacon and 2nd deacon and see what they have to say. Thus, the guards and craftsmen discussed and decided to ask the 2 deacons about the situation. Soon, Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin were surrounded by dozens of guards and craftsmen. Faced with the doubts and questions of the crowd, the 2 brothers were unable to answer and could only try their best to appease them. In the end, they had no choice but to look for Yun Yao and Bai Long. Madam Consecrator, could you please ask Lord Consecrator when we can leave? Master Consecrator is in mine number 9. He ordered that no one is to disturb him. We don't know what Master Consecrator is doing. Now that the guards, craftsmen and miners are waiting anxiously, it's hard for us to explain. After hearing this, Bai Long turned his head to look at Yun Yao, revealing a trace of an inexplicable smile, and transmitted his voice. Mistress, I told you that these people are troublesome. When Master saved them, they were all grateful and kowtowed to thank him. Now that their lives are no longer in danger, they became suspicious when Master didn't show up for 2 days. After all, they're outsiders and don't trust us enough. Yun Yao nodded slightly and transmitted her voice. It's just a small matter. Don't worry about it. Tianxing doesn't plan to stay here for long anyway. We're only helping the Qi family because the father and son of the Qi family are good friends, and we're also getting some benefits. To put it simply, Ji Tianxing and Qi Huangji were friends. The relationship with the Qi family was more of a mutually beneficial one. Yun Yao looked at Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin and said calmly, "Please don't be impatient. Just let everyone wait here. Since Tianxing has given the order, just do as he says. You can't do anything to deal with the Blood Sword sect and Lu family, so don't worry." Qi Tianxing and Qi Tianxin were a little embarrassed, but they couldn't refute and could only nod. They couldn't blame others for looking down on them. After all, they were too weak. The only thing they could do now was to appease the Qi family and continue waiting. Outside the Divine Tower. After 2 days of treatment and recuperation, more than 40 black-clad experts were saved. The mysterious black light from the Divine Tower had burned their bodies and damaged their godheads. Now their physical bodies had been destroyed and their godheads were severely damaged. Even if they survived, they were no longer qualified to participate in the battle. Only the 4th elder Lu Jiuchong and 8 elite disciples of the Bloodsword sect still had the strength to fight. The 8 black-clad elites with divine swords were scattered around the Divine Tower, monitoring the entire island. Once someone approached the island, they would be the first to discover it. The 4th elder and Lu Jiuchong stood in the sky, staring at the Divine Tower with a serious expression. After a while, the 4th elder was still in deep thought, not saying a word. Lu Jiuchong couldn't suppress the anxiety in his heart and asked in a low voice, "4th elder, it's been 2 days and we've tried more than 20 methods. However, this Divine Tower is as solid as a tortoise shell without any flaws. We can't do anything about it. We can't go on like this. In 2 days at most, Qi Tianlong will return to Qingshan City. At that time he will definitely lead a large number of experts to reinforce the Profound Light Cave." Before he could finish, the 4th elder interrupted him and said in a deep voice, "What's there to be afraid of? It's just the Qi family. Even if Qi Tianlong comes, this old man will still kill him." Lu Jiuchong choked and didn't say anything else. He finally understood. The Blood Sword sect was determined to get the Profound Light Cave, and they would do anything to get it. At this time the 4th elder ordered in a deep voice, "Lu Jiuchong, our way of thinking is wrong. The grade of this Divine Tower should be beyond the Monarch grade. It's very likely a King grade artifact. No matter what method we use, it's impossible to break it." King grade artifact? Lu Jiuchong's eyes widened in surprise, and a trace of excitement and greed flashed in his eyes. However, he immediately suppressed his greed and didn't dare to show the slightest bit. He was very clear that no matter how tempting a King grade artifact was, he didn't have the qualifications to touch it. The Blood Sword sect would never let go of this King grade Divine Tower. Anyone who dared to snatch it would be ruthlessly crushed by the Blood Sword sect. Dispelling the idea, Lu Jiuchong lowered his head and asked, "4th elder, have you thought of another method?" The 4th elder nodded slightly and said, "We don't need to pay attention to this Divine Tower. We'll dive into the ground from the edge of the island. Go 100 li underground and then sneak into the Profound Light Cave. We'll definitely succeed." End of chapter. Chapter 2857. Lu Jiuchong was startled for a moment, then immediately revealed a look of understanding. "4th elder is wise. You're absolutely right. Our goal is the Profound Light Cave, not this Divine Pagoda. Even if the Divine Pagoda seals the entrance, we can still sneak into the Profound Light Cave from underground. As long as we enter the mine, the Qi family, without the protection of the Divine Pagoda, will soon be slaughtered by us." 4th elder pointed at the more than 40 black-clothed experts and ordered, "Lu Jiuchong, you stay here with them. This old man and the 8 elite disciples will sneak into the ground." The more than 40 black-clothed experts had their bodies destroyed, and their godheads were also heavily damaged. Their fighting strength was very weak and they could only barely make up the numbers. Lu Jiuzhong wanted to refuse, but he thought about it again. He would stay above ground anyway. As long as they didn't attack the divine pagoda, there would be no danger, so he nodded and agreed. This Lu will follow Fourth Elder's order. I hope you will be victorious. Fourth Elder didn't say anything else. He took the 8 elite experts and was about to sneak into the ground. He had already used his divine sense to explore that the divine pagoda released a 5-colored light that covered a radius of 300 miles. As long as they went down 300 miles, they could find a gap or a passage to sneak into the profound light cave. Once they succeeded, they could quickly occupy the profound light cave. And the Qi family could only hide in the divine pagoda, not daring to show themselves. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A burst of 5-colored light flashed. The Fourth Elder and the 8 elite experts landed in the ruins around the divine pagoda and drilled into the ground. Everyone used the 5 elemental laws to sneak into the depths of the ground without any obstruction. After a short 100 breaths, everyone had gone down 350 miles. This area was filled with indestructible rock layers and scattered god's stone veins. The Fourth Elder and the 8 experts extended their divine senses in all directions, carefully inspecting the situation underground. About 50 miles above their heads, there was a 5-colored barrier of divine light. That was the power of the divine pagoda. It was like a ball of light with a radius of 300 miles, protecting the entire profound light cave. However, many of the veins in the profound light cave were more than 300 miles long. Some veins were even thousands of miles long, extending in all directions. The Fourth Elder wanted to investigate those mineral veins and look for gaps and crevices in order to sneak into the profound light cave. This was a meticulous job that would take a long time. But the Fourth Elder was patient enough. Time passed silently. The Fourth Elder and the 8 elite disciples had been moving in the depths of the underground. They carefully explored every inch of the land, not letting go of any rock or ore. Unknowingly, another day passed. Unfortunately, everyone still came up empty-handed. Meanwhile, Lu Jiuchong and more than 40 black-clothed experts were meditating in the sky. The 40 or so experts were circulating their energy to treat their wounds, trying to heal their charred bodies. Originally, they had only wanted to leave Profound Light Island and recuperate in seclusion. But without the Fourth Elder's order, they didn't dare to leave without permission. Even if it was a waste of time, they had to stay on the island and wait. Lu Jiuchong had nothing to do. Other than resting with his eyes closed, he was waiting for the good news from the Fourth Elder. In the evening, the sun was setting in the west. Lu Jiuchong sent a message to the spies of the Lu clan, inquiring about the Qi clan's situation. Not long after, he received the news from the spies of the Lu clan. Qi Tianlong is on his way back to Green Mountain City. He will reach Green Mountain City in at most 2 hours. Hearing this news, the corners of Lu Jiuchong's mouth hooked up into a sneer. When Qi Tianlong reaches home, he will immediately ask about the Profound Light Cave. He will definitely bring a large number of Qi clan experts and rush over at the fastest speed. At that time, the Fourth Elder will definitely go on a killing spree and kill Qi Tianlong and the Qi clan experts. In this way, the Qi clan will be finished. There will be a good show tonight, ha! Lu Jiuchong muttered to himself, revealing an expectant expression. However, just as he was feeling complacent, the silent divine pagoda suddenly burst out a circle of 5-colored ripples. That was a 5-colored divine flame, spreading out like ripples, sweeping across the sky. Lu Jiuchong sensed the danger and did not hesitate to teleport 500 miles, retreating to the southern sea. The 40 black-clothed experts reacted slightly slower and their speed was also slower. When they realized that something was wrong and wanted to retreat, it was already too late. Bang bang bang. A series of muffled sounds burst out, reverberating in the sky. More than 40 black-clothed experts were swept by the 5-colored flames, suddenly bursting into sparks and splashing out endless black ashes. In the blink of an eye, their bodies turned into ashes. Even their godhoods had been completely destroyed. They burst into fragments, falling from the sky, reflecting a 5-colored dazzling light. More than 40 people were killed in an instant, not even their bones were left. On the sea 500 miles away, Lu Jiuchong looked at this scene in horror, his forehead dripping with cold sweat. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he was alert enough to escape the island in time. Otherwise, if he was hit by the five-colored divine flame, even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Damn bastard. There was no movement for the past 2 days, but now there is a sudden attack. The person controlling this divine pagoda is too despicable, too insidious. Lu Jiucheng raised his sleeve to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead, cursing with resentment. As soon as his voice fell, a cold voice entered his ears. Bastard, give me your life. A dazzling sword light suddenly fell from the sky, slashing toward Lu Jiucheng. The dazzling golden sword light was more dazzling than the sun. Before the sword light arrived, the terrifying sword intent had already sealed off the area within 500 miles. Lu Jiucheng's heart trembled and he hurriedly took out a treasure sword, slashing out sword lights that filled the sky. Bang bang bang. More than 35 colored sword lights, carrying the power of the 5 colored laws, slashed toward the giant sword. The sword lights collided and a deafening explosion erupted. The 5 colored sword lights shattered, but the giant sword's power did not diminish and it struck Lu Jiucheng. Although he had the divine light protecting him and at the critical moment he held the divine sword above his head with both hands. But he was still sent flying. The protective divine light collapsed and he fell from the sky into the bottom of the sea, splashing up huge waves. Splash. When Lu Jiucheng rushed out of the sea and returned to the sky, his hair was disheveled, his face was pale and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He looked in front of him with resentment, locking onto the white figure in the sky. He saw that it was an 8-foot-tall handsome young man in a white robe with black hair. His hands were behind his back and his expression was arrogant. His entire body was filled with an invisible domineering aura. Seeing his face, Lu Jiucheng's eyes narrowed and he exclaimed, "The Qi family's consecrator? It's actually you." Lu Jiucheng did not expect it. The person who attacked him and injured him with one move was actually the Qi family's consecrator. He clearly remembered that the Qi family's consecrator only had the strength of a heavenly god at the martial arts competition 20 days ago. And now the other party's strength had obviously increased by dozens of times. Chapter 2858. Even if he saw it with his own eyes, Lu Jiucheng also found it hard to believe. He could not see through Ji Tianxing's strength realm. But he was very certain that Ji Tianxing was absolutely a divine lord powerhouse. Furthermore, it was very likely that he was a middle-stage divine lord. Boy, how did you do it? Lu Jiucheng stared at Ji Tianxing with a chest full of shock and asked in a solemn voice. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said with a cold smile, "Since you're terrified, don't make any more pointless struggles. Kneel down and accept death." As he said, he released an invisible divine might, sweeping over toward Lu Jiucheng. Immediately, Lu Jiucheng was suppressed until his complexion turned pale. A trace of fear welled up in his heart. Even though Ji Tianxing had yet to break through to the divine lord realm. But he devoured the divine crystal mineral veins power for 3 days and 3 nights. Presently, his strength already reached 36 times of peak celestial deity. This was a realm that any celestial deity found hard to imagine. Even Lu Jiucheng was shocked too, confirming that he was a middle-stage divine lord. Boy, don't be arrogant. Lu Jiucheng gripped his divine sword tightly and said coldly in a threatening manner, "Even if this seat can't beat you, that senior can also kill you easily. Do you think that you helping the Qi family seize the profound light cave is a gargantuan merit? Too foolish. You brought a calamity to the Qi family." Ji Tianxing smiled coldly and said, "Looks like you're already dead set on being a lackey for the Blood Sword sect. That white-haired old man is the Blood Sword sect's 4th elder, right?" Lu Jiucheng was stunned for a bit and thought to himself, this bastard, not only did he recognize this seat, he even knows the 4th elder's identity? Could it be that he's the Divine Tower's owner? Previously, he hid inside the Divine Tower and secretly eavesdropped on our conversation? Thinking up to here, Lu Jiucheng's 2 eyes surged with a brilliant light, his gaze becoming scorching and greedy. "Boy, this Divine Tower is yours?" His gaze stared at Ji Tianxing with a scorching gaze and asked in a solemn voice. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and said, "What do you want?" "Ha ha." Lu Jiucheng suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly. He sighed emotionally as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. "Before this, I was worried that the person who had such a divine weapon was most likely a high divine lord. I didn't expect it to be you, you little bastard. Since that's the case, as long as I kill you, the divine pagoda will belong to me. The temptation of the divine pagoda dispelled Lu Jiucheng's doubts and fears, and his heart burned with passion. Ji Tianxing's face was full of disdain as he shouted coldly, "Reckless fool!" As soon as he finished speaking, he formed a divine art with both hands and activated all of his power to perform a supreme sword technique. Daylight sword. With a cold shout, a blazing white halo flickered in the sky and disappeared. Lu Jiucheng sensed the danger and immediately teleported away. Shua. His figure flashed and crossed 250 kilometers, appearing in the east of Profound Light Island. However, as soon as he steadied himself, a dazzling white light bloomed in front of him, bursting forth with destructive sword chi. Boom! A blazing white halo exploded in front of his chest, and a blazing white mushroom cloud rose. The white light covered the sky and covered 1,000 miles, so blinding that people couldn't open their eyes. Lu Jiucheng's protective divine light directly collapsed, and his black robe was also twisted into countless cloth strips, and a large cloud of blood spurted out of his chest. He was caught off guard and was seriously injured by the daylight sword. Not only was there a wash-basin-sized bloody hole in his chest, but his internal organs were also blown to pieces and blood gushed out wildly. The heart-wrenching pain made Lu Jiucheng let out a shrill scream. The violent impact sent him flying and he landed on the surface of the sea 100 miles away. In just one move, Lu Jiucheng was seriously injured and his body was on the verge of collapse. Ji Tianxing did not spare him and took advantage of the victory to pursue. Shua. With a flash of light, he teleported to Lu Jiucheng's side, holding the Burial of Heaven sword and slashing down fiercely. Sky-splitting sword. 8,000 feet long 5-colored sword light, carrying the power of 18 types of laws, drowned Lu Jiucheng's figure. The world within a 3,000-mile radius was enveloped by divine light and sword chi, and it was dazzling. Lu Jiucheng watched as the sword light fell, but he was suppressed to the point where he could not dodge, and his heart was filled with fear and despair. Kaboom! Another loud explosion rang out, shaking the universe. Lu Jiucheng was hit by the giant sword, and he exploded into pieces on the spot, splashing out a cloud of blood. Even though his divine body had been tempered thousands of times and was extremely tough. Even though he was a divine lord elite who had mastered more than a dozen divine Tao laws. All of this was useless in the face of the tyrannical heaven-splitting sword. He was so weak that he could not withstand a single blow and he was killed instantly. Tens of thousands of pieces of flesh fell from the sky into the sea. Even his godhead was injured by the giant sword and a few cracks appeared on it. As a result, his consciousness was hazy. He could not even control his godhead, let alone counterattack or escape. The godhead fell from the sky, flashing with 5-colored divine light and fell into the sea. Then Ji Tianxing caught up again and slashed with his sword. Swish! The 5-colored sword light shone and slashed at Lu Jiucheng's godhead again. Lu Jiucheng finally woke up. Seeing the sword light slashing at him, he was scared out of his wits, and an extreme desire to live burst out. He unleashed his divine power without holding back, forming a giant 5-colored light shield to protect his godhead. Kaboom! The sword light slashed down and shattered the light shield. Lu Jiucheng's godhead was thrown away and a few more cracks appeared on it, and his injuries became even more miserable. He was completely terrified and he ran towards the south without caring about anything else. Swish! The godhead lit up with a bright divine light, dragging a long 5-colored flame behind it as it streaked across the sky like a shooting star. He was still praying silently when he flew over Shuangguang Island. He hoped that the fourth elder would notice something and save him in time. Otherwise, he would not be able to escape Ji Tianxing's pursuit and would definitely die. At this moment, the fourth elder, who had been exploring underground, finally found something strange on the island. He immediately stopped searching and left the underground as fast as he could, flying over the island. Swish! A white light flashed and the fourth elder appeared in the sky. He saw the situation at a glance. Lu Jiucheng's godhead was flying over the island. 100 miles behind him, Ji Tianxing was chasing him with a sword. Seeing this, the fourth elder's eyes narrowed and flashed with murderous intent. "Die bastard!" The fourth elder's voice was as loud as a bell. He raised both of his palms and punched towards Ji Tianxing. Seeing the fourth elder stop him, Lu Jiucheng was relieved and full of joy. He didn't dare to expect the fourth elder to be able to hurt Ji Tianxing. He only hoped that the fourth elder could stall Ji Tianxing so that he could have a chance to escape. However, Lu Jiucheng was destined to be happy for nothing. Ji Tianxing ignored the 2 giant palms of the fourth elder and moved 200 miles in an instant, appearing in front of Lu Jiucheng. The golden sword light rose again and slashed down with full force. Lu Jiucheng was caught off guard and crashed into it. Boom! There was a loud and clear explosion. Lu Jiucheng's godhead was shattered by the sword light on the spot, and 12 pieces splashed out and fell on the sea. At this point Lu Jiucheng had completely died. Chapter 2859. Even though Ji Tianxing had teleported 200 li. However, the fourth elder's 2 palm shadows also crossed a distance of 200 miles and hit him with a loud bang. Bang! Bang! With a muffled sound, Ji Tianxing was sent flying. He retreated 50 miles before he managed to neutralize the impact and stopped in the sky. At this time, the setting sun sank below the sea level and the world became dark. Ji Tianxing and the fourth elder were 100 li apart, facing each other in the sky above the sea. The 8 elite disciples of the Blood Sword sect also spread out, forming a half-moon formation and surrounding Ji Tianxing. Both sides were seething with killing intent. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. Only the sound of wind and waves could be heard. The fourth elder coldly stared at Ji Tianxing and said, "You are the Qi family's consecrator?" "You already know," Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly. The fourth elder's voice was even colder. "Brat, you are very arrogant. But you are very stupid. With your strength and talent, you shouldn't have relied on the Qi family, let alone offend our sect." Ji Tianxing sneered. "From the moment I heard about the Blood Sword sect, everyone told me that the Blood Sword sect is one of the 6 great sects of the divine nation and is extremely powerful. But I didn't expect that the Blood Sword sect would covet a mere profound light cave so much that they would do anything to seize it. From this, it can be seen that the Blood Sword sect is only SOSO. The fourth elder was a bit angry. He frowned and shouted, "What do you know? How can you guess the value and significance of the profound light cave? Moreover, the profound light cave is not the only place our sect wants to control." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Indeed. A sinister and vicious evil sect like the Blood Sword sect would naturally plunder resources and treasures everywhere in order to maintain its power. But I'm very curious. For the past 70 years, the City Lord's mansion has been controlling the profound light cave. Even the City Lord's mansion didn't know about the astonishing wealth hidden in the profound light cave. How could the Blood Sword sect know about it?" The fourth elder was silent for a while before he sneered. "Brat, do you really want to know?" Ji Tianxing didn't say anything, which could be considered a tacit agreement. The fourth elder's smile became even more playful. "All right, this old man will give you a chance. As long as you leave the Qi clan and join our sect, this old man will tell you the answer." Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully. "Ha! I disdain to associate myself with the beasts of the Blood Sword sect." The fourth elder was furious. His face was ashen and his eyes were spitting fire. Ji Tianxing continued, "Actually, you don't have to say much. You can guess it. He was most likely an expert of the Blood Sword sect who accidentally discovered the secret of the profound light cave. However, the profound light cave belonged to the City Lord's mansion. The City Lord's mansion was also a noble conferred by the theocracy, the City Lord. Even if the Blood Sword sect was powerful enough to crush the City Lord's mansion, the Blood Sword sect would still be able to do so. However, due to the divine nation's laws and face, the Blood Sword sect couldn't openly deal with the City Lord's mansion. You can only endure and wait for the martial arts tournament that is held once every 10 years. Then they will use the names of other aristocratic families to seize the profound light cave in a dignified manner. Ji Tianxing spoke with fervor and assurance, his words clear and organized. The fourth elder frowned as a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Clearly Ji Tianxing's guess was correct. However, the fourth elder remained silent and didn't refute. Ji Tianxing continued, "Originally, your target was the Qi family. You wanted to seize the profound light cave in the name of the Qi family and make the Qi family a puppet of the Blood Sword sect. However, you didn't expect that I would suddenly appear and spoil your plans. Even if you chose the Lu family and seized the profound light cave in the name of the Lu family, I still ruined it. Therefore, you flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to destroy the Qi family at all costs. After he finished speaking, the fourth elder couldn't help but applaud and praise. Wonderful. Kid, your intelligence and wisdom have made this old man have a whole new level of respect for you. A genius like you shouldn't waste your time in a small place like Qingshan City. This old man sincerely advises you not to waste your talent here and choose another master. After saying this, the fourth elder added, of course, this old man knows that you don't want to join the Blood Sword sect. However, the Blood Sword sect can recommend you to a wise master with great talent and foresight. Under that master's command, your talent will definitely be displayed. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a playful smile as he said, if I'm not wrong, the master you speak of should be the backer of the Blood Sword sect. In the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom, someone who can be the backer of the Blood Sword sect. I think it's only someone from the Divine Kingdom's royal family, right? The fourth elder's eyes lit up and he was even more shocked. This matter was confidential and only the upper echelons of the Blood Sword sect knew about it. For Ji Tianxing to be able to deduce the answer was truly unbelievable. The fourth elder didn't answer directly and instead said in a dignified tone, Kid, since you already know the answer in your heart, this old man doesn't need to say more. You're a smart person and should know how to choose in order to benefit your future. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, that's right. Of course, I know how to choose. If I do as you say and join that royal family's noble, I'll be able to do it. With my talent and methods, I'll definitely be able to shine brightly and overturn the rain and clouds. In just a few years, I'll be able to run amok in the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom and have great power. Hearing this, the fourth elder couldn't help but nod and reveal a gratified smile. Very good. You're really sensible. He thought that Ji Tianxing would agree. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing shook his head and said indifferently, it's a pity that a mere Blood Flame Divine Kingdom isn't worth my time and effort. The Blood Flame Divine Kingdom and even the entire Great Yan Empire are just a small place in my eyes. Playing politics here is the real waste of time. Hearing this, the fourth elder's eyes widened in anger. He was both shocked and furious. The 8 elite disciples were also somewhat stunned and glared at Ji Tianxing. Little bastard, how dare you be so arrogant? The fourth elder came back to his senses and roared like thunder. Ji Tianxing laughed loudly and said, a summer insect can't talk about ice. How can a frog at the bottom of a well know the wind and clouds outside the sky? Fourth elder, this seat will send you on your way. Ji Tianxing formed a sword seal with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. Sword light covered the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sword chi swept across 3,000 miles. Moon beyond the sky sinks into the sea. In that instant, the dazzling sword light illuminated the 3,000 miles of sky and sea, revealing every single detail. The fourth elder and the 8 elite disciples were shocked and tried their best to fight. The two sides engaged in a fierce battle above the sea. The sky was filled with sword light and saber shadows clashed, creating a loud explosion. The brilliance of divine spells that blotted out the sky and the sun intertwined with each other, blooming into the most gorgeous fireworks. Bam, 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 boom, boom. The loud sound reverberated and divine power surged. Huge waves rolled up in a few thousand miles of sea, creating thunderous tsunamis. This battle was 10 times more intense than when Ji Tianxing killed Lu Jiucheng. The fourth elder was a middle-level divine lord and an old monster who had cultivated for almost 10,000 years. He was extremely powerful and had a deep foundation. Ji Tianxing could only go all out and use all kinds of trump cards to be on par with him.